Welcome to A Woman's Brew, where women talk about beer. In today's episode, we quiz Joey from Beer in the City on his London-based events and discuss the importance of diversity within the craft beer community. I'm Joanne, and this is Tori.
Hello, hello.
And we're two beer-loving women on a mission to get more people drinking and talking about great beer. Come join us. All right, today we are joined by Joey, who is from Beer in the City Guides. Now, we met on the off chance at Werewolf Beer's opening, didn't we? And we just kind of bumped into each other and we were like, oh, you're drinking beer, I'm drinking beer. What do you do? Oh, you've got a podcast? Oh, you do beer tours? That's fun. Maybe we should do a podcast about that. And here we are. So, welcome. Lovely to have you. Let us know a little bit about yourself and about Beer in the City Guides, please.
I like your recollection of the way that we met.
Yeah.
That it was like, oh, there was. I was drinking a beer, you were drinking a beer.
Yeah.
Our eyes caught, across a crowded, very, very, very creatively decorated tap room. I have to say, I was very. It was. There were talking points everywhere. I feel like it was very easy to talk to people because you'd be like, oh, see that
skeleton on a train,
right?
Yeah. See that zombie in the corner? Yeah. Haven't seen one of those in a brewery before. But yeah, no, it was exciting to meet you and sit down, and it was like, you were sitting there and clearly had a good energy. I was like, I want to talk to people in here who seem like they're good people. So I sort of feel like I sort of disrupted your relaxing evening.
Oh no, it was fine. Didn't my friend also go, she's a beer influencer, you should talk to her? And I was like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, she threw you under the bus.
Yeah, she does.
I would actually melt.
Yeah, it was. You handled it great, and it made me feel like I was in the presence of someone extremely important, which of course I was.
Not at all.
So.
I was so glad that I didn't end up going in the end, because you would have realized very quickly.
Oh, she would have hated it.
I would have ruined that whole because Joe does give that air in everything.
Yeah.
And then
God,
I would be
what
like,
are you talking about?
God. I'd be under the table. Like, oh no.
I'd be like, it's great to meet you, Joe, but there's like this other person
someone
under the table.
Under the table.
If you know them.
She seems to be in your area. What's going on?
She's like nudging you out the way with her foot, Tori, like trying to make you read. Right, I realized I totally didn't even answer your question about who I am. But reminiscing about good times in breweries is pretty much my favorite thing to do.
Amazing.
In human history. But anyhow, yeah. So I'm Joey, and I run a project called Beer in the City. It is a quite new project in its current guise. It's been going around just about a year and a half, and the goal of the project and the mission is to introduce people to the world of craft beer who might already enjoy drinking beer and drinking other things, but ultimately find craft beer either inaccessible, not so inclusive, or just a bit intimidating in some ways. And it's funny. I saw there's a cartoonist who I really like who does cartoons in The Guardian. And she did one that was about craft beer, and I was reading it, and I respect pretty much and love everything she does. And it had these 4 boxes, and it was sort of like, I'm trying to go to a craft beer brewery, here's my experience kind of thing. And it's like, I sat on some uncomfortable poles. I was faced with 300 beers to order. There was a bartender who wouldn't explain to me, and it was like this kind of thing. She was like, essentially painting this picture of her experience that was very negative in breweries in total. I read that and I was like, wow, that is actually how people either do experience breweries sometimes, or how they assume they're going to experience breweries as well. So I was thinking, I literally trust everything she does. And now I'm like, wow, there's an issue here, isn't there? Because she's clearly had this experience in at least one, if not more. Enough that she's doing one of our cartoons about it, and other people clearly have this experience too. So I'm thinking, okay, how can I try to be part of busting that myth? And it kind of comes from that mindset, essentially.
Okay.
And I say myth, actually, it's not necessarily a myth, is it? Because some of them are like that.
Yeah. We went to a tap room that's just opened up near me, and it was brilliant. But they had those orange benches that every tap room has. And I was like, oh, it's the orange.
We were on the walk-in, we're like,
benches.
oh, it's the orange benches.
Orange
There we go.
I have to say, whoever owns the Orange Bench Company is making an absolute
Right?
killing.
Millions.
So much. So much money.
Richest person in the craft beer industry is the owner of the Orange Bench Company
Yeah.
by miles.
Yeah. 'Cause every tap room's got the orange benches.
Yeah. It's like breweries don't want you to have good posture. Like they want you to have future back pain.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
does it play into some kind of like, long game strategy that if we have back pain, we'll think we need to drink more in the future and then we come back and buy more? I don't know. I've never kind of understood.
And there's always one bench, that there's always one bench that's so wobbly that like one, like anytime you're sat on it and then like one person gets up off the other end and you're like, whoa, and you're like, I'm on a boat, what's going on? There's always that like one table and bench set. That is just,
it's normally the one that's empty. And you're like, oh, I can't believe there's a table. I'm so excited. Yeah, free table. You sit there and the whole thing like flips up and sort of catapults you like a cartoon character,
Yeah.
And then you do the immediate look around. Did anyone see that happen? Okay, you're just shuffle down.
Yeah, especially after a few drinks, there's always the wobbly bench is.
I'm not drunk.
Yeah, I promise it's the bench. It's the Orange Bench Company. Damn them.
Oh no, that's it. That's what we need to set up, like a new company that's just giving out comfortable seating for tap rooms.
Yeah, or just like has a small back on it.
Yeah.
I'm like quite a diminutive figure, but so I sort of like easily sort of fly off these things. I feel like I always sort of, if I like fall backwards, I like get quite a lot of air time. Yeah. And it's like extra. It's even worse. And I sort of I just want to. What I want to do is just like lean back on a little thing. It can't be that hard. I feel like we've stumped. I hope no one. Like if the Orange Bench Company people are watching or listening, I genuinely like we need to be careful, don't we? Because you don't want to upset.
We have ideas. We have ideas for you.
We have ideas for you.
Yeah, just get hold of us.
Business idea.
We'll work together. It's constructive growth.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Feedback is a gift.
Yes.
Feedback is a gift. Right. Anyway, so that's who I am. I'm a sitter of Orange Benches, and yeah, I think. It's interesting. I try to think about my own like journey, how it got to this point as well, and it's sort of that's where you always look at people who are successful, and you also look at people like myself who are not as successful yet. And I'm thinking, okay, I want to be able to like understand my own sort of origin story as well. So I sort of wrote it out at one point, like a few months ago, and it's quite hard to pinpoint like the actual. And I love the word origin story as well. Very superhero, isn't it?
It is very much,
Yeah. Makes me feel like an Avenger. I've never watched Avengers, but I assume they will have very snazzy origin stories.
They all have origin stories.
Is that bad?
Controversial. I think it's controversial, but
controversial.
we can let it slide.
Maybe we'll
going out the gate.
We'll cut that bit.
We'll cut that from the eventual podcast, right?
Yeah, I can cut that out.
Gosh, no. So it's interesting. So I actually I was listening to one of your recent interviews with Echo, and I was really intrigued by them talking about the family element. And hearing them talk about how beer has been in their family for a long time, and I thought that was fascinating and interesting. My origin story is pretty much the exact opposite. So my parents are both teetotalers, and mainly because of culture. My mum's a Yemeni Jew and grew up in an environment where like alcohol was just like not a factor. It wasn't a thing. They have a culture that's very much predicated in like Yemen, even though they're not Muslim, very much mired in like Muslim society where there's no drinking. And so spending time with my family growing up, there was no alcohol. There was no alcohol anywhere around the house. Even though within Judaism we drink a lot of wine, this very, very disgusting sweet kosher wine that we all have to have at festivals just to like make sure we're not having too good a time. We have like sugar wine.
Just to put yourself in check.
Yeah, just to make sure things don't get out of hand. And but beer's not really part of the culture anyway, but it definitely wasn't part of mine growing up. And I actually was one of those really cool kids at secondary school who didn't start drinking till I was actually 18, which again is, I don't know if that's an admission I should be, well, technically I'm admitting I didn't break the law, but it's
it's admirable.
Very, Very rarely do you have someone that's just like, oh, should I admit that I did not break the law?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
dicey.
Yeah, I don't want to, this rebellious nature that I clearly have. It only
Yes.
kicked in at some other point. No, so it's interesting. Yeah, so I started drinking late as well in life, and at the start, you go to university and everyone's just drinking as many cheap things as they possibly can get their hands on, and it's sort of a cost benefit analysis of what can get me drunkest, the cheapest, and the quickest in this like perfect holy trinity of cheap, quick, and an amount. I'm glad to say those days are long behind me, but essentially, and this was around sort of 2009, 2010, right? And there was no the even notion that beer was something that was enjoyable to me was way away. It was just that it was like a functional thing for socializing in some ways. And only sort of after that, in I don't know, like 2013, 2014, I ended up doing a lot of traveling around, and I find myself sort of on a very, on a tight budget and only wanting to drink things that I really enjoyed. Sort of like, I'm going to treat myself this evening, something nice. And eventually you start understanding that there are like, I started understanding there's different kind of things. So I was in Colombia in 2014, and they have this spirit aguardiente there. I've probably pronounced that horribly, but
you join the club. I pronounce things terribly all the time. I try. I do. It's best intentions.
Yeah. I love that. So yeah, so we'll go that aguardiente, and it's very strong and very potent, and I think it's at least 40%, if not more. And I sort of I didn't really want to have that as my sort of like drink of choice going through. And I stumbled on the first day on something, I think it was Bogota Beer Company. It was BBC, and I said, well, that's a sign, because it's my first day here, and BBC reminds me of home. And so I walked in and had a beer, and I remember it like specifically, and it was amazing. It was amazing. And now I look back, I believe it was a 4% pale ale. Okay. That had no special sort of like features to it at all. But at the time I was like, what is this flavor? I think it was like citra hops or something, I don't know. Yeah. And it blew my mind. And you always remember like your first drink kind of thing, and it's like, oh, like this. And then I made it like my mission throughout my trip there to try and find like amazing craft beer. Now, Colombia is not known as like a hub of craft beer, and there's a reason for that, which is that I pretty much failed to find good beer the rest of the trip. So I sort of had this like one moment in my mind, and so it's not like I went off and like discovered like the craft beer scene of Colombia, because in 2014 it didn't exist, and so I ended up like coming back to England and being like, I wonder if I can find beers that taste like that one, and it turns out I could. And 2014, what was the beer scene like here in 2014? It was much smaller than today. And
I was gonna say, it's difficult to say, because I moved to the UK in 2013, and I think when I first moved, I was mainly drinking ciders, I think, except for the occasional going to Brewdog. Like, you would see punk IPAs I think everyone knows, I know, controversy aside of Brewdog, like everyone knows, like that's a lot of people's gateway into craft beer. And to be fair, I was drinking craft beer before I moved to the country, but it was like sort of rediscovering it over here. And I think a lot of like that whole first year, it was ciders and the occasional punk IPA, or going to a Brewdog and trying what they had. But other than that, I don't think it was like as accessible, as far as from my awareness anyways, in 2014.
In about 2014, what was I doing? I think I'd just come back. I think we were starting to get more stuff, certainly not as big as it is now, but I think at that point, before that I'd been buying mostly just beer in the supermarket, and then around about that time I was like, oh, there are shops that I can get this, like little independent bottle shops had things, and I was like, oh, there's European beers and things from places like that. And I was like, oh, that's a bit interesting. Like, we were starting to bloom, I think, around about that time.
So that makes a lot of sense as well, because I keep thinking to myself, did I stumble across it at the time it happened to be blowing up, or is my journey kind of unique? And I think actually I'm one of many people who think, oh well, it's console, but I discovered it kind of early, or well, I think that's just because when it kind of did actually start.
Yeah.
So that's why we all kind of discovered it around then in some ways.
Yeah.
But I know what you're saying about Brewdog as well. Controversy aside, that is a gateway, and I can think of the fact that those bars were like popping up all around the country, weren't they?
Yeah.
Around then as well.
Yeah.
And I think Joe and I were talking about it, and we were sort of talking about like you'd go into a Brewdog, and a lot of the times they'd have the local, like they'd have more local craft breweries as the guest beers, or they'd have like breweries that you maybe hadn't like heard of, and you're like, oh, what's this? Like I know one of the first times I think I was buying Wild Weather, I think was inside a Brewdog. They had it on, and I was like, I think I saw the label and I was like, that's a really cool looking label, and that's a really interesting sounding beer. It was a sour of some sort, I think, and I was like, that's a very interesting beer. And then I got it, and then I realized like, yeah, they're quite literally just down the road from me. And so I think that was like a gateway in the sense of punk IPA being a gateway into like IPAs and that whole scene in general, but also the fact that their bars were offering these guest beers of craft beer that you were like, oh, I've never tried these people, I've never heard of them before, now let me go and see what else. And then you start looking at them and then what they have to offer and what places around them have to offer.
Definitely.
It's I'm trying to think. Brutal. I mean, it's amazing. So I mean I was gonna mention this later. So I one way that I realized how much I then had sort of only wanted this type of beer it's related to Brewdog and their sort of like general expansion. I went to live in Turkey. I was working for a humanitarian aid organization, and I went to live in Istanbul for about 2.5 years, 2015. And what happened was, and the beer in Turkey is atrocious. This stuff, it's FS, and I remember I used to be very excited. It's FS, and there's another company, Bomonti, as well, which is basically exactly the same, and it's perfect beer for being freezing cold on the beach when it's really, really hot. And in all other circumstances, it's diabolical. But the issue is that Istanbul is only hot like 4 months of the year. It's not that hot. Like it snowed all 3 winters I was there, like insane snowstorms. You don't want like that beer doesn't work in like that part of the country, essentially. So while I was there, I managed to find the one kind of international supermarket that had like things from outside, and every couple of months they'd randomly have like 3 bottles of I think it was Dead Pony Club, like one of the Brewdog the lighter beers. And I'd go in and I'd buy all 3, and they'd be 10 times the price probably of all the other stuff, and I'd have them and I'd store them in my fridge for like, you know, special occasion kind of thing. And it was funny, they sort of knew me sort of by the end, because I was constantly going in and be like, do you have any more of the Brewdog beers? They'd be like, no. And I'd be like, I literally gave him my phone number and I said, you have to message me because I'm not having anyone else buy these beers, like I want them. And I'd go in, so there's only one left, and I'm like, Sheffic,
you let somebody else buy it.
Sheffic, I thought we had something, mate. And he's like,
or his phone is Dead Pony Guy. Just like, every time it comes in, go call Dead Pony Guy.
Dead Pony Guy. Yeah. But the issue I then had was like the stockpiling. I think I feel like we've all kind of been there when you're very into something as a hobby. You're in a stockpiling, and then you sort of never end up drinking them. And I remember my sort of final couple of days ever in Istanbul before I moved back here to England. And my fridge had just like 6 Brewdog beers in it, like still just sitting there, each of which I paid, I reckon, at least a tenner for.
Wow.
And I was like in like Turkish lira, and I was like, I don't know what I meant to like do with these, because I could just drink them, but I don't want to get like absolutely wasted like on my final day. But on the other hand, like I paid a lot of money for them, so I decided I was going to wrap them in bubble wrap and try and bring them in the suitcase. And on arriving back to England, they all made it. They all made the journey. But I reckon it was about 3 hours before I went into a shop here and literally see the same exact beer for obviously about £1.20 or something, like £1.50. I was like, it sickens me.
I was going to say, I probably would have walked in and been like, well, shit. And then I would just like walk back out again.
Like, this feels so much worse than if I just like given them to friends. But it's like, you know, sometimes some people would, you know, come over to my house, or I'd go to something and be like, well, I wasn't going to bring my beer to like a house party. That's like, you don't bring the best stuff. I love how Dead Pony Club was the absolute like creme de la creme of beer for me for like 2.5 years. And they'd come over and I'd be like, oh, do you want a beer? And they'd be like, yeah, sure. And I'd have like my FS beers.
The sharing beers.
Give them,
let me offer you one of these.
And I'd have my Dead Pony Club. And they're like, what's that you're drinking? And I'm like, oh, it's just like a different one. They're like, oh, like, do you have any more of those? I've never seen it. I'm like, nah, just I think this is the last one actually. They're like, I think they're like 30 of them in your fridge. I'm like, no, those. No. You must have that must have been something else.
I think it would be even better if when you went for your second beer, you're like, oh, do you want another drink? And they're like, yeah, please. And then you grabbed another one. He's like, I thought that was the last one. You're like, it was.
Yeah.
This is. Then
I found it.
One. Yeah.
I can't really know that
one. It's crazy.
That was the problem. I could never have more than one because I'd be busted, because they'd know that I wasn't sharing the ones that I still had. So I was sort of sipping it very slowly, like enjoying every single morsel of Dead Pony Club. Yeah. Wow. I'd actually pretty much forgotten about Dead Pony Club in Turkey being so. It was quite a big deal for me though, just to be able to get my hands on something familiar. And by that point, it had become this kind of like beacon of home. And look, I mean, Turkey, it was quite hard while I was there. Like there was a lot of like turmoil going on in the country. And it was like this feeling of home in some way, this feeling of like reassurance, you know? And I think in some ways that also like deepened my, this sounds so wanky, I'm going to say it sort of deepened my connection to how beer can be such a positive contributing factor in like, you know, cultural awareness in some ways. And when I got back, things just got like a little out of hand with like wanting to explore the world of craft beer like so much more. I was in the trip to Berlin just with some friends, and one of them she had Untapped on her phone, and I'd never heard of it. And she and the other guy were like Laura and Mike, and they were like, oh, you should get this thing, like then you can just like see all the beers you've drank. And I was like, that's funny. They're like, yeah, you'll never forget one that you drank again, and you'll know like which ones you like. I'm like, that's such a good idea. Cut to like 6 months later, and I'm like, gotta catch them all. You know,
gotta get all the badges. Gotta get all the badges. Yeah. Literally,
like going full 11-year-old me Pokemon cards levels of unhealthy obsession with getting as many, you know. And it's funny. Yesterday we were at a little like brewery kind of crawl with a couple of friends who don't have Untapped, and I was telling them, oh, you should get this. Like, how do you know which beers to drink and which ones? And well, there's this app. I said, well, it's loved and it's hated. I'd say it's much maligned, but ultimately, if used well, is a very powerful tool to aid your beer experience. They would say, okay, that sounds unnecessarily cryptic.
There is a lot of ins and outs of it. It depends on who you ask, because like I can totally see all viewpoints of it, and it is how specifically you use it. And I mean, I think Joe, we've had a conversation, we've had it with other people before as well, about how using Untapped for you, like I think a lot of us as users tend to use it just for us, but there's so much attention put on what a score is of something, or you know what the actual feedback is, that it can actually have real consequences on a brewery if it gets, you know, less than certain amounts, or if things aren't being, you know, put in, or a beer is oxidized and it's being on there. You know, there's a lot of real world implications and costs that can happen to a brewery if they don't get a good review. So I can understand their viewpoint on why a brewery might not love Untapped as much as a user is using it for their own personal experience.
Yeah,
I actually think that's like that is just like so true. I've never heard anyone say something about Untapped actually that's as lucid as what you just said there, Tori. Like it's no, seriously, it's like the concept that ultimately this is a game to most people, but like this is people's like livelihoods that we're kind of playing with, and it is there is a sort of ethical challenge there, isn't there? And it is an interesting one. So I mean, something that I found myself doing in the last couple of years since I've been working really heavily with breweries here in London is because I do use Untapped. I'll admit it. I use Untapped.
We do
and as you said, it's really.
too.
Yeah.
I was going to say, my question for you two was, do you use it as well?
Yeah, I use it.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair though, but I'm like you, the way I use it has changed over the last 2 years, more specifically, because I think since the start of the pandemic, when I'm actually more, because everything's been forced online and you're engaging more directly with breweries, brewers, all that, and you can hear their side of it, of how it impacts them. Like I definitely used to use it in a way of like, I've had this beer and first, like for the style, it might be really good, but like I don't personally like it. So I would be like, yeah, not for me or something, and I might rate lower than what it deserves, because I'm like, I want to remember if I see that again that I actually really didn't like that for my personal like taste. And I was so disconnected from the fact that like the brewery is going to see this, other people are going to see this in a way that it impacts them. And I think like after having seen the feedback from breweries and having those conversations directly, now if I manage to, I mean, you talked about stockpiling beers and everything like that as if it's a thing of the past. I mean, for me, it's still probably the present, because I'm like, I really want that and I don't want to miss out on it, but sometimes I don't get around to drinking it until after the best before date. So if I'm drinking it, even if I like it and it's past its best before date, I won't rate it. Or if I'll just check it in so I know I've had it. If it's something that I've really enjoyed, but I can't remember it fully because maybe it was like the 5th, 6th, like high percentage beer of the night, and I'm like, yeah, by that point I don't fully remember, I just won't rate it because I don't think it's fair. So that's kind of how the evolution of how I used Untapped has changed. Joe, I don't know if you've sort of like had any
I feel
experience.
the same. Like there were times like, you know, I can go back through some of mine and, you know, I had a lager and I was like, I don't like lagers. One. But actually, it was a really good lager. I'll have revisited it and been like, what are you talking about? That's actually a really good lager, you idiot. Like, so, you know, it's definitely
Meanwhile, it's like
changed
Heineken, like 4 stars. Like, this is great.
You know, yeah, like, so there's definitely, like, if you go back in my, because I've been on there since 2012, so there's a lot on there from me. But I did, yeah, and I will go through times where I won't check in for ages, and then we'll want to like use the stats. So I'll be like, I'm going to check in like 200 beers. So yeah, don't look at the dates on mine.
Yeah, it'll be like you have a big night that night, Joe.
And there's one
like
guy,
day drinking. Like everyone will be like, "Are you day drinking?" And I'm like, "Oh no, I just have some downtime. It's my lunch break."
I'm just chucking in these. And there's like, I think he stopped now, but there was one guy that follows me who every time I would do like a big chunk would be like, "You had a heavy night." And I'm like just catching up on my check-ins, and then like the next day, "You had a heavy night," and I'm like, "No, I'm just catching up on my check-ins." Like it was funny the first time, but now we've done it 15 times and it's not so funny. But thanks.
I feel like that's the equivalent of when you go to a shop and someone rings in something and it doesn't ring it doesn't scan, and then like the guy's like, "Oh, I guess that means it's free." You're like, the first time you hear it, you're like, "Oh, that's a joke." And then the 7th time you hear, like, "Guess it's free," you're like, "It is not free. It is never going to be free."
Yeah, that's so funny. It's funny, there's definitely an irony there, and Tori, I take a similar approach to you with that. If there's a beer actually that I don't even really like, I normally just won't rate it anymore. If there's a beer so I only ever, the lowest I rate is probably 3.5, which I think is about the average. But what I wish they had, and this is my big opinion, I'm assuming they're listening to this.
Yes, of course they are.
This is the best beer podcast out there, and they are in the beer business. So if they're not, then they should be.
Like it.
Yeah. But the thing I wish they had was the ability to check things in like private mode. So only I can see it. It doesn't contribute to the global rating, and therefore I can use it for the purposes that I think it's powerful for, without actually like damaging someone's business. Essentially, I think that's like the key thing that I would change. And it sort of surprises me that because the response to Untapped is becoming more, I think, what we're kind of discussing, especially from within the industry, that they have tried something. I'm saying this as if making an app and making an app do things is really easy. I have absolutely no idea how to code. I imagine making an app is very difficult. I think they have enough money to figure it out. But still, I'm like, just like make a new feature. How hard can it be? Just like get some of the code changed or something.
Get you guys on it.
Yeah. But yeah, no, it's funny. So one of the things that I do with beer, actually the sort of beer in the city genesis, which I'm going to use instead of origin story to make it even more biblical.
Oh, nice. I like it.
I'm Jewish, so I can throw in all these like random like the biblical references, and it seems to make sense in my head, and everyone else is like, "What are you talking about?" But the sort of the genesis of beer in the city was actually about writing guides. It wasn't ever meant to be in the events, to be honest. That wasn't the goal at the beginning. The goal was to write guides for people to access craft beer. So the same mission, but it's really about the written word. And as you can tell, I like to talk and I like to write, and I write in the same way that I talk. And one of the first things I wrote was sort of like the Joey decode to Untapped. It's basically saying, here's how you can use this really, really well. I mean, step one is like download the app. Step two is like rate a beer. But then it kind of like it explains that. Then there's like ways that you can kind of get into it and what it all kind of means. And people get very obsessed with it. And then I've got this kind of the threshold and way you use it is yours to figure out, and everyone rates in a different way, and sort of it's up to you. And I think the thing that I've tried to say is the ratings that you see are massively skewed by like three key factors. The first one is alcohol volume. Any beer that is over 6.5% automatically is like, you know, a 10-15% higher than the same beer would have been, like, you know. So it's like every time. So my rule is if I see something and it's 9%, I use 6% as my kind of baseline. And so if 9%, I think that then it's overinflated by like 0.3 or 0.4. And then there's like the other direction happens as well, which is like with lower ABV beers get a really bad rep on Untapped. So you have to also like adjust for that. And then the second thing is like when there's like a hype beer or a hype brewer, you know, like the sort of shiny Charizard kind of beers. People are just going to be like, this is amazing because they paid £12 for it. And they probably are really good, these beers. But it's not like, you know, you need to get hung up on them. And then the final thing, and it's funny, you know, you see these ratings. It's like Heineken, like 5, best beer ever. And it's like, And then, but this time they were having a heavy night, and it's the fact that they were wasted when they checked it in.
Yeah, well, it's situational, isn't it? It's situational. Yeah. If I'm having a Heineken on a boat in Amsterdam, like literally going by like the Heineken brewery or something like that, and I'm having like it's sunny, I'm with my friends, we're having a really good day, I might be like, yeah, like 4 stars. If I'm just having it in a pub somewhere, it's a bit shit outside and everything, you're like, meh, it's just a Heineken, isn't it? Like it's so situational in that sense. Like that could definitely inflate your ratings as well, is the situation which you're drinking those beers, whether you're pissed or whether you're actually out having like the best time ever and suddenly the beer tastes better.
It's so true. I mean, it's like psychology probably is linked to our taste buds. I feel like, Joe, you probably know stuff about this. You're like the Cicerone expert. I don't know how that works, but I imagine like if you're having a good time, things taste better. There's probably some biology or science to that.
I'm sure there is.
Yeah. So. But it's definitely any beer in the sunshine on a boat in a European city is automatically going to be like 100 stars.
Yeah,
like,
preach.
Best beer ever. Very good. The thing I was just like thinking about as you were mentioning like the boat and the beer in the boat is also like these like other cities and like finding good beer in those places. And I found it interesting because I continue to be able to travel for work, which is not related to beer whatsoever. And it's that when I find that when I am able to go away, and I think, okay, often I'm on my own or I'm meeting partners in these different cities around the world. And in the evenings I'll be free and available, and you know I'll go for a meal on my own. I find eating on my own quite challenging. I don't like. I'm very extrovert. I don't like having meals alone. There's something lunch I can handle. Dinner on my own. I find it like a sort of psychological struggle. But I'll do it because I need to eat food to live. But then I'll like to go for a beer, and I think there's something about like going into a bar or a pub when you're abroad, pitch on your own, which is. It's marginally more acceptable than it's considered here when you're at home, but it's not quite the same as going into a brewery on your own. And I think the thing that I love about breweries, and Joe, it's like, you know, basically the way we met, I rocked up to Werewolf completely on my own.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I'd have done that if it was like a cool like cocktail bar or something like that. I think it's more, you go to these breweries and the environment that is created a lot of the time is one where socializing and being sociable is not just permissible, but in fact it's actually invited. And I think that's really, really powerful. And I find that there's a commonality in these spaces worldwide where you're able to talk to the brewer or the owner or the person serving the beer behind the bar, and they're just up for conversation, because normally people in breweries are not just, 18-year-olds doing it to earn a bit of cash on the side, but it's people who are really actually passionate about beer, who can also be 18, but not younger. But and you automatically have something to talk to them about, because you're passionate about beer too. And I think, like, it sounds obvious, but it's the differentiation for me of why a brewery is an environment that I want to champion more so than, let's say, a craft beer bar or pub, which are also great. But the brewery world, I think, is fascinating. The taproom world is, like, fascinating to me. And so that's also something that I'm trying to, I talked about that cartoon strip earlier, and the notion that, therefore, and this sort of gone round in a circle now, is that people find those spaces intimidating or difficult to engage with. It frustrates me, because but not the people who find it difficult to engage don't frustrate me. The fact that the breweries create environments that are, because they don't have to be like that. Every brewery can be this inclusive open space, because there are ones that do that, and there's no reason why all of them shouldn't be like that. And for me, again, that's about doing that and trying to, like, improve the experience of other people so that they can benefit from it in the way that I perceive myself to have over the last 5-7 years.
Yeah, so I think it can be quite intimidating. Like, there's definitely, like, you need to have those, like, starter level breweries that you go in, and then maybe there's, like, not 30 tap lines, there's like 6, and it's a little bit more like bright and more like something that something that's a bit less intimidating to walk into. And, like, I think there are breweries that you walk into, and once you know what you're looking for, and what to expect from certain beers and certain environments, and you are more comfortable walking in places like by yourself, for example, that can make some of those really intimidating spaces less intimidating. But you can't get to that level until you sort of have that confidence. So it's like, if you can take somebody in and, like, with your tours or something, you can take somebody into a space and be like, this is not an intimidating space, this is why it's not an intimidating space. You might give that person the confidence to go someplace else that maybe they wouldn't have gone to on their own, because they would have felt like, oh, it's too intimidating for me to go in there. I don't know what I like, and I don't know the questions to ask. And you bringing someone in and being like, okay, when you go and you want to try to figure out what you want, here's the things that you are okay to ask. And then they'll be
Tori,
like, oh, cool.
you just gave me this idea. Okay, so firstly, I want to just check my privilege in terms of also being a man and going into the spaces on my own is obviously a very different experience as someone who's not a man. So I want to just check that very, very clearly.
Appreciated.
And you just gave me this, like, amazing idea that you should do potentially, which is thinking about writing. Maybe this exists, and I don't know about it, but if it doesn't, then it could. Is a guide specifically for women who, in terms of breweries that are, like, gateways, and these are ones where you could start. If you're a woman who often wants to go and drink on your own in a brewery, here are some spaces where it is that I, Tori or Joe, have experienced and can sort of speak from my own experience that feel inclusive and safe for a woman on her own, or in a pair or whatever, and actually, like, create that guide for people to actually actively try to achieve that goal.
Yeah, I think what my head was at was not even so much about coming from, like, a female perspective either. I think it was just coming from, like, an overall, you drink beer and you're sort of, let's go back to that punk IPA reference. Like, you're at that punk IPA end of the spectrum where, like, that you don't really enjoy Carling and Heineken and all that, and you enjoy punk IPA when you go out to a bar, but you don't really know, like, how to, like, you want to progress on. But craft beer as a whole, I mean, it can be quite intimidating. It's not intimidating for us because we have that experience with it. We know what we like, we know what we don't like. We're adventurous people, we like to try new things, and some people might be afraid to try those things, and they might not even think to go to a brewery to try beer, because in their mind, like, the normal place to go is to a pub or to just a bar and have beer, and they're not running into these beers somewhere else. And I think, let's be real, like the image that's projected out there is very much like a, no offense meant here, but like a bearded male environment. It can be very like, people think like, oh, even when it comes to men, like if I'm not like a hipstery dude wearing my flannel and having a beard, like, oh, I can't go in there, I'll get looked at. In the same way that, you know, I wouldn't, you know, my thought is like, oh, the local pub on the corner of the road, like I don't look like the people that I tend to associate with, you know, a local pub. Like if I walk in there, I'm going to get looked at. So I think my thought process wasn't even so much just about being like a woman walking in and being intimidated. I think it's just like anyone that's not yet in the craft world wanting to get in but not knowing how to make that first start. Like you could definitely do something where you create a guide for like entry level of like, here's etiquette of like, it sounds so stupid, but like here's like etiquette where like it's okay to ask for a sample before you order something, and like maybe don't order a pint of something that you're not sure if you like, or don't be afraid to ask questions, and here's the things that you maybe want to try to like. I think you've done like sort of a rough guide of like beer on your website, and I had a look at that. I thought it was quite clever in the way you were like, it's like this but more like that, and I thought that was really clever, and doing something that ties into that could be really helpful to make it like less intimidating for people when they go into those spaces. But I think you're right, like you could easily do one for, you know, women, non-binary people, like LGBTQ, like spaces that are conventionally you know, less than the majority historically that have gone in these spaces, and where can these people feel safe to go? Like you could it could easily be a thing like that. So yeah, I mean, rock on.
Yeah, I think between the three of us, we've come up with the next thing that Beer in the City needs to do. I mean, so you mentioned the style guide. So yeah, I have a style guide for anyone who wants to order a beer at a brewery without it being really stressful experience. That's literally what it's called. It's people were like, you know, can't you have a snappier name? I'm like, no, because that is what exactly it is. For word, that is what this is. It is a guide for people who want to order a beer at a brewery without having a stressful experience, right? And as you said, it's like I go through pretty much every style that you might see on a thing, and this is, I've been called out on it, not in a really negative way, but in like a sort of funny way, by people who are like BJCP judges and cicerones. They're like, this is absolute like carnage, you know that, right? And I'm like, that's the point. Is I'm writing a language that like that my mum would understand. Yeah. Like I'm thinking of like she as the most extreme level of like has never tried a beer basically in her life. I mean, it tends to explain. So she went, although that actually a lie. I saw her earlier, and she told me that yesterday she had met up with some friends, and they like to drink and she doesn't drink, and one of them had brought her a non-alcoholic beer. It was a Beck's Blue.
Oh, right, okay.
They brought her two, and she never tried it, and she said to me, it's actually quite refreshing, isn't it? And I said, yeah, I think that's why people like. I think that's why people like them, Mum. Yeah. And she's like, yeah. She's like, quite refreshing. She's like, well, they gave me two, but I didn't really want the second one, so I brought it. So if you want it, you can have it. I was like, that's really sweet of you. I will totally take that. And then what I will do is, on my way out of the house, because I live separately to her, I will throw it in the bin. But she won't know.
She won't know.
And that's fine. She thinks that I'm going to drink the Beck's Blue, and I'm like, what hops does it have in it? Kind of thing. It's like, it's like I don't think anyone knows. But yeah, no. So it's funny, and so I'm looking at people like my mother who has no access to beer or understanding of it, and what can she read that will actually like make sense, will compute in terms of like this feels like this or is like this, and it's all just comparisons. And so it was also like quite fun to write, to try and be like, what does this taste like if I didn't know anything about beer at all? I've never tasted like a saison, for example. And the saison thing, I go on about hay for a long time. It's like a paragraph about hay and like eating bales of hay. And I'm probably upset a few people with it, but I don't care.
I think it's brilliant, because like, how many times have you had that non-craft friend that's like, I really like Guinness, what do you recommend? And like your guide is like, if you like Guinness, it's sort of like that, but different.
It's sort of like Guinness, but different. Sort of like coffee,
sort of a different, but like maybe there's more coffee in it.
Exactly. So those sorts of things are like, so I like what you're saying about, so that's obviously like in terms of what you can drink. And so what you're saying is maybe we should do a guide We should. I mean, you realize
Yeah,
I'm seeing
cool.
this as a
I was
collaborative
gonna say, like,
endeavor.
We'll be up for that.
If you finish listening to the Echo episode, you listen to anything else, I just go like, here's an idea, just go with it. Feel free. You don't even have to collab with it. You can just take it for yourself. That is fine. But yeah, no, I mean, what you were saying about your mum as well, like there's gonna be other people that either don't like to drink, but there's so many more also like non-alcohol or low alcohol breweries popping up as well. I've been experimenting with myself, and I'm not I very much am not a person that's going to switch to non-alcohol, but I like to try it just to be like, is there anything that I think convincingly tastes like beer? You could do a guide as well to like, you know, no and low alcohol breweries, because there are quite a few.
Yeah, no, it's good.
Accessible for people that are the designated driver or something.
That is actually a very good idea. I have to say, these ideas are really good, and I'm like, I need to just like do them, and I'm like,
pick my brain later.
I've got like a whole long list of art. I've got so many drafts that I still haven't published because because I got kind of side. Is that your life? Yeah.
Welcome to our lives. Yeah.
Yeah, I did this about a year ago, just over a year ago. It was sort of middle of March last year, so it was really like the sort of coming towards the end of the final lockdown, and I was really scrapping for things to do in my house, and I decided I was going to do a guide to the best pale ales you can buy from the supermarket. But I thought you know what, instead of just writing it, I've got loads of time on my hands, and I'm gonna record it. It's gonna be like a cool like YouTube video, and. Yep. And so I set it all up, and I bought my 10 supermarket pale ales, all like independent and craft ones, and sort of tried to write my script. I would say it took me about 4 hours in total to get through them. I had to re-record loads of bits. I was very drunk by the end. And then I was like, I'm too tired to edit this. The next day I had to look through it, and I was like, this is absolute garbage. Like it is like absolutely unusable. I couldn't believe it. I was like, I thought in the moment it felt really like I was doing a really good job, but I don't have that much experience. Like I've never made a YouTube video before. I was like, this is so much harder than I thought it was going to be. Trying to edit it just to salvage anything. Literally, like after about another 3 or 4 hours of that, I just gave up. And now I have this like folder on my Google Drive that's just like videos of me drinking pale ale and being like, supermarket, son. And it's like it's and I want to use it because there's so much time on it. Yeah. But it's like actively unwatchable. In my only
supermarkets, eh?
I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't know what happened to me during it. I think I don't like looking at myself. Like whenever I do Zoom calls, I had to turn my self view off. And and I'm sort of like what am I going on about? And I just like it was so poorly planned and executed. And so I have this pale ale video that someday someone
will find a way to salvage it, don't worry.
I'll release
we'll come up with something.
It's so bad. So I realized that wasn't quite what I wanted to do, but I did like talking about it. And so what happened was I sort of, when we were in lockdown, and it was quite challenging without being able to go out and socialize and things like that and bring people together in a room. And the job that I had prior to working in nonprofit was I was a tour guide, a London tour guide, a walking tour guide. And I had a bunch of different like niche themed tours, and they were meant to be educational and the themes were quite specific, and it used to get quite interesting crowds on them. But I think the unique selling point was their specificity. So there was no like everyone, oh, did you do Jack the Ripper? You cannot imagine the amount of times I've had that question in my life. The question people ask me the most in my life: did you do Jack the Ripper tours? No, I didn't do Jack the Ripper. Every single tour in London is a Jack the Ripper tour. So that's exactly what I'm not going to do. So I used to do these tours, and I was thinking, how can I do something again to like bring people together and do that sort of thing? And I was sort of like daydreaming at one point about a year ago. So just after Pale Ale Video Gate, and I was like, maybe I can do like a pub quiz. I quite like quizzes. I would say, inappropriately competitive.
Okay.
To the point that there's definitely like a pub or two that exists in London that I'm
face band on it, like not allowed in.
I'm not welcome back at.
To
I'm welcome at the pub, but I'm not welcome back at the pub quiz specifically.
He's a great guy, but if you get him on the pub quizzes, it's a no-go.
It unlocks a part of my brain that is not meant to ever come out. I don't know what it is. I
It's your
I just
version
get
of
so-
Limitless.
Yeah, kind of. And it's less about like needing to win. It's more about like fairness. And I think like if I feel like I haven't won because I didn't do as well as everyone else, then I'm okay with it. But if I feel wronged in any way by an answer,
Like somebody like in the corner they had their phone out or something like that, and you're like, I mean, that's not fair. They blatantly were Googling.
I cannot deal with that at all. It's like my red line in my life. I'm quite like a calm human. Like I very rarely get like irate in any way, other than pub quizzes seem to do something to me. So I had to retire from participating in them. But what I realized is potentially I could re-enjoy pub quizzes by being the quiz master. Nice. So I wandered down to, this was when things had just opened up last June, I think, June, July. I wandered down to my local around here, it's the Rose and Crown pub. And I mean, I could be anywhere. I mean, that's literally like the 5th most popular pub name.
Literally be anywhere.
You can't find me, listeners of the podcast, because I could be literally anywhere.
Yeah.
Because there's a Rose and Crown around the corner.
Everywhere.
So I wandered down and I said, "Oh, I know you used to have a pub quiz here. Someone had mentioned it. I'm just curious if like you're thinking of running it again." And they were like, "Maybe." And I was like, "Well, I can do pub quizzes." And they're like, "Oh, do you like run pub quizzes?" In my head, I'm like, "Yes, I do." And I'm like, "I do now." And they were like, "Great." They were like, "Great. Well, let's do it." And I said, "Great, let's try it out." And so I thought, okay, how can I like make this a little bit more like creative? And it just, again, it took me on this little journey for the next few weeks where I just thought, okay, I'm gonna like bring in elements from quizzes of my past that I have enjoyed. Yeah. And try and curate this like environment of, again, inclusivity, atmosphere kind of thing. But this was just this pub. So it's a craft beer pub. So it's like old-fashioned vibe, but all the beers are like independent craft breweries. So that's one of the appeals of it as well. So I decided to call it the craft beer pub quiz. I made a poster for it on MS Paint.
Nice.
And yeah. Rock and roll,
the OG,
yeah, and went and did it, and it was a massive success. It was really good. I think like people were just excited to be back in a pub doing a quiz. And I thought, okay, but I think I can actually make this better and do more with this whole like sort of thing. And at this point, I had the writing, and I have a very talented artist friend who had drawn these like graphics. I'm like trying to show off my t-shirt, but my camera angle is like.
I was going to say it's on your website as well, which we're going to link to anyways. And
it's absolutely everywhere. It's absolutely everywhere. This picture, yeah, he's an amazing artist and made these graphics for the brand, and I love them. And so then I thought, okay, I can do more with this. So what I did is I whipped up a proposal document and then put all of my kind of like tour guiding expertise into it and thought of everything that I've done ever before that has been really super fun and tried to like create this, what this experience is going to be. And then I sent it to like, I don't know, 10, 12 different breweries around London. Be like, I'd love to come in and do this. So about half of them responded. Now, how did I choose the brewery? So this is sort of linked to what we were talking about before. I'm trying to think about...
Let me just time out. So we did discuss questions beforehand. So if people are like, how did you know what she was going to ask? Just FYI. Carry on. I thought I'd preempt that. So it's because you were like, it's links into this. And I was thinking like, if someone goes, how did he know that?
Yeah. It's because we discussed beforehand, but that was, I was like, was that before we were? Yeah,
it was before we hit record.
Yeah, before we hit record. Yes, that makes no sense to anyone. But it was, but related also to
how do you pick the breweries?
I wonder if you have any questions for me about how I pick the breweries.
We would love to hear that.
I was going to ask.
We would love to hear that. Yeah.
Coincidentally, but it is also linked actually to what we were talking about just now in terms of gateway breweries and ones that are more inclusive and spaces for people who maybe aren't as into beer. So I call it the craft beer pub quiz. And it's sort of like it's meant to be more of an experience, but ultimately at heart it's a pub quiz. But there's like a lot more going on, and it's sort of developed and changed over the last few months as we've gone. Like it's sort of evolved, I'd say. And I approached really breweries that in London, number one, that I like the beer of, and two, the ones that I thought, actually, this is the kind of place that people who wouldn't normally come to a brewery should come. So I'm thinking about like places. So I'll give you an example of the first one pretty much that got back to us was Exhale in Black Horse Road. And this is, I think, the kind of brewery which has the brewery, this aesthetic, the big tanks and the kind of tall ceiling, kind of warehousey feel, and has great beer, and has an environment that I think generally adds to people's, like, sort of, who don't know much about beer or haven't been to a brewery before, and it's quite a sort of a welcoming environment. And so I thought that'd be a good one. They were really up for it, and so yeah, we've done a few there now, because it always goes really well. And what I find is you get normally about, let's say, like 40 or so people come to each quiz, right? At every place I've done. I've done it now, I think 25 times across about 12 or 13 different breweries. And you normally get each team of people, there'll be one, maximum two craft beer nerds. And then everyone else is just like their friend who was convinced to come to the brewery for the first time.
Yeah.
Because there was an event there. And so, people, and a pub quiz is familiar and it's relatable. Even though what I try to do is a little bit different and there's like a round where we like say limericks, and there's like a few other like odd bits and pieces going on. It's not just questions. But most people who come have never been to a brewery before, or have never really drank craft beer before. They're just with a friend who has, and this is their moment to actually, and people come up to me at the end of every single one. That was amazing. I didn't realize like you could do that in a brewery, or like, well, so this beer is incredible. Like I didn't know beer could like taste like this kind of thing. And that's joy to my ears, because that's ultimately amazing. What the point of it is. It's meant to be an entertaining night for people. It's meant to, and the questions, there's one round about craft beer to satiate the nerds who have come.
Fair.
You need to satiate the nerds, because they're the ones ultimately.
We appreciate that.
They're bringing people to you.
Yeah.
Bringing people in. And then you have all the other rounds, and often I'll start with the beer round, and you'll see there's teams who will get like 9 out of 10 and teams who will get like 1 out of 10. And they'll be like, this is too hard. I'm like, don't worry, like it will switch round in like 2 rounds. None of it, the rest of it's about beer. I come around, I reassure the teams who I know are feeling a bit anxious, because I like to get to know everyone who comes. So I always, I wander around, I talk to each table, I sit down with them and say, oh, how did you hear about this? Or like, have you been here before? Or, like that kind of thing. Like, what beers are you drinking? Can I recommend anything? Like people often end up thinking that I'm a member of staff at the brewery for that night, and they can't believe that I'm not. And I'm like, I don't know if that's like a good thing or not, but
it's a positive.
I think it's a good thing with balance, isn't it? And I try and go around and get to know people, and we have, people come back all the time. I get to now start seeing the same people at different ones and stuff, which is good, because it's wonderful. I've even made some new friends from it and stuff. On the other hand, it means I have to continually write more and more challenging quizzes, and I write it all myself. I enjoy writing quizzes. Yeah, tell me about it. A couple of times I've accidentally selected questions that I've used before. And then someone's been there, and they'll be like, "Oh, we've had that one."
I'm surprised their memory. So if you waited like a few months and did it, I would I wouldn't even remember.
Yeah, I don't remember that I've asked the question before, but they'll come up and be like, "You asked that question about the Trappist breweries last time," and of course I did. Like, they should just not tell me and do really well in the quiz.
Right.
That's very honest. That is
that's
very
really honest.
Yeah.
Well, I was gonna ask you, like, how much knowledge did you actually have to have about beer? Because like going through the website, it was like, oh, it's these beer themed like quizzes, interactive sort of beer themed quizzes, and I was like, oh, how much do you actually have to know? So that's quite. If anyone's listening to this, that's like, I would really like this and I'd really enjoy this event, but the people I would go with are not craft beer nerds to that same level. Because let's face it, if you're listening to us and you've made it this far, you probably are a craft beer person. You're probably not just like or my mum. You are either a craft beer nerd or my mum.
Not my husband.
And not my husband either. So that's fine.
They don't listen.
But at that point, it's like you could kind of know that at least there's one place that it's like you can get your fill, and you know that the other person's going to have a good time, because it sounds like you've had really positive feedback and they're having a really good time. How far in advance do you have to plan these quizzes out? Like, what is your schedule of like how far you plan them out in advance?
Yeah, great question as well. And I really want to double down on what you said just before there as well. Like, it is meant to be for people who sort of don't know anything about craft beer as much as it is for people who know about it. And I'd like to think it ticks the boxes. And the real feedback is that the breweries asked me back, right? It's like, okay, if they want me to come back, it means it's gone well. And that people come again and again, that also means it's going well, right? So people are voting with their feet a little bit with this. And had no one turned up, or people were like, this doesn't really work, I would have probably just stopped. But now it's getting out of hand. Like I'm over capacity. Like I get breweries reaching out to me to ask me to do it, and I'm one guy. And I think, you know, people say, well, maybe you should like find other people to do it, and you become like the big quiz, you know, around in London. I think that ultimately is something that'd be like a vision for like in 1 year, what would this look like? It would be that, right? I also like have a day job.
I was going to ask you,
Yeah,
because you alluded to it a few times, you know, what actually is your day? Because you've not actually said it, or as much as you can say, what is your day job?
I'm in between like a few different jobs. Basically, I'm sort of, I work with like different types of communities to try and like build like community around Europe and here in the UK, often with university students, to help them engage with local cultures when they go to like study abroad or travel abroad. And then I also do a lot of facilitation. So I lecture for like a business school called Jolt about communication skills and community building skills, mostly for people who are looking to change a job or upskill. So I was a lecturer on the government like Kickstarter program, which was getting people from you know, backgrounds who wanted to upskill or change career, and I was helping train them specifically in communication skills and community building and stuff like that. So I get to do a lot of that, which is why I used to get to travel quite a lot as well. Because I'd go and do it in different places. I was in Berlin last week doing something similar, like a group of 18-year-olds who were on like a kind of gap year program, looking for like sort of cultural awareness kind of program. And I got to do a whole day workshop on communication skills, and then I got to have a whole next day. They were like, "Do you want us to fly you back to England like that night?" I'm like, I think I'm going to have like another 24 hours here where there's only one thing on my agenda, and it's beer.
Yeah. Perfect.
But yeah, so that's kind of what I do, and it's not actually that miles away from like the whole beer, like the way I engage with beer in terms of like it's all about education for me, and like trying to help people engage with topics more when they have been unable to. And it's linked sort of to what you asked, Tori, your actual question, and I'm a tangent freak. I just can't go off on tangents. But about like how often, like how far in advance I write the quizzes, because I write it all myself. And to be honest, like it's when I can, essentially. And I have like a whole like array of questions I've written, and I'll like sort of mix and match them to try and get a good flow and balance. And then I come up with things. I've got a guy who does like all my printing and things like that, and he's like really invested in beer in the city. He like does not really understand like what is going on, because I just like randomly pop into his printing shop, and he's like, "Here's your posters," and he's like, "I'm like, why don't you come to one, Chris?" He must be in his like 70s or something, and he just has this like little tiny little shop, and he's just he just wants it to succeed like so much, and he's just like, "Oh, like how we do it? How was the quiz? You know, how are we doing?" And I'm like, "Oh, Chris, you're so part of beer in the city now. Like you'll never come to one of the events, and you don't really know what the point of it is, but you just do all this printing, and you're just like really supportive." And he's like, you know, he's just like a really, really good person. And it's just like, you know, doing this project has enabled me also to like have these encounters with people and like build relationships with individuals that otherwise like I probably wouldn't. Because if I did printing, I'd just do one of those big online corporations. But I'm trying to, the whole point of this is about championing independent business. So I try to do that with everything I do with beer in the city. So there's another component of the quiz, which is I would say I'm quite self-deprecating. And there's one thing I will congratulate myself on, is this aspect of the quiz, which is the prizes.
Yeah.
So every team gets a prize, and the prizes are all purchased from charity shops. And what I do is like every week before a quiz, because it's normally about once a week that I do them, I'll go down to the charity shops on the high street. There's 4 of them. There's Shelter, British Heart Foundation, Oxfam, and can't remember off the top of my head, and Catcat. And I go in and I look for the most ridiculous items I can possibly find. I'm talking books about stuff that you wouldn't even know existed from like the Victorian ages. I'm talking about like egg cups and like weird phone cases, anything I can find that is the weirdest item. And the best part of it is that I don't have to go and pay for all of them. I'll put down in front of them this array of like completely unrelated items that I'm seeing. I think they're surprised anyone wants to buy any of them at all.
You need to
And then-
slip a poster to them.
Just like,
Yes.
Like, you could be the winner of one of these.
Yeah, exactly.
Just-
They don't. Sometimes I feel the need to qualify myself when I'm buying a particularly like there was a book of erotic food recipes or something like that, and I felt the need. I did see the person like glance in. I was like, oh, it's not for me. Not for me.
Oh, does that make it better though? You're like, oh, it's not for me.
I don't know, actually. I promise.
I think you should just say nothing. Confident, like meet eye to eye confidently, pay for your items, and you just strut out. I think you just strut out with confidence. Go, yes, this is my erotic food book.
Yes, and I will enjoy every
and my egg
recipe.
cups and my phone case. I am going to record myself making it and using the egg cups.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah, it's always a funny thing. It's like it's quite a mission for me. Like to like, what's the weirdest thing I can find in the charity shop each time?
I love that.
So the fun part of it is, so then the entry money that people pay like £2 or whatever for the quiz is essentially reinvested back in the charity shop. So there's this like very small, very light touch charitable giving component as well. But again, I could get the prize from anywhere, but it's just like I thought this is actually like, you know, it ticks another box in some ways, and it's not a big deal, you know, it's a few quid here and there, but
I think you're being very self-deprecating there, because I think that is a big deal. Like I think like there's a lot of people that would just be like, yeah, I take your money and it goes to me or whatever else. It's the fact like you are reinvesting that in a charity shop, and I think that is worth taking a moment to be like, that's a really cool thing, and I don't think I've heard anybody else do something similar like that, and it's really, really cool. Like the second you were like, before you even said, I didn't even connect the dots about £2 gets paid and you put it back to the charity shop. The second you were like, I look for the weirdest thing in a charity shop, that is my brand of humor 100%. So I was like, that is so cool. Like that's like me and my family, you have like Christmas swap and we're like, who can get the weirdest thing for someone? And like, that's amazing. Let's just find like weird lawn ornaments and stuff like that. That is my brand of humor. But then when you were like, yeah, so really it's me taking that money, that's the entry fee, and putting it back into your charity shop. And then you're like, it's not that big of a deal. Like to me, that is quite actually a big deal, and I think that's really, really cool. So sorry to interject. Just needed to say that.
This is your podcast. I'm sorry.
We're here to talk to you, and I'm like, hang on a minute, I have something to
you
say.
don't have to apologize. You're talking on your own show. But it's also really, really fun. Thank you for those words, by the way. But and you know, it's funny. Like at the beginning of each quiz, I lay all the prizes out on the bar or like on a side thing, and I'm like, by the way, it's like the prize kind of like array, and people come past and they're like, what on earth all those items? I'm like, oh, you'll see. But it's nice. Every team gets to have a prize, basically, which is nice. Sometimes you'll see a little bickering within a team about which prize to take. So wait, we don't get a prize each. I'm like, I'm not made of money. But like,
£2 entry, guys.
Yeah,
I'm gonna go to a charity shop, but come on.
Yeah, but I'm like, you don't get a prize each. Prize per
miracle
team.
worker.
And sometimes you'll see a team. There's a bit of that have been getting along fine all night, and then when it comes to choosing which prize, I think there's been some friendships lost because of the prize.
Maybe you need to like
choice.
suggest if you can't figure out amongst yourselves, rock paper scissors shoot for
Yeah.
it. Like,
Yeah, seriously. Yeah,
thumb
and,
war.
one funny thing I always find in the charity, for some reason they always have, I think it's shelter. Someone must donate these regularly, but there are these glasses, like cups. They are this big. They are the world's smallest like glasses I've ever seen. You could put maybe 5 milliliters or something in them, but they're like these, but they're like wine glasses, but they're like, imagine if you shrunk a wine glass, basically as small as you possibly can. But so I always buy all of them when I see them, and they're the trophies. So the trophies are like the world's smallest glasses, and I give them out. So the winning team gets the trophy, and then there's normally like a bar tab that the brewery provides, or something like that, a round of drinks for the winning team. But I think once people, not too many people are there for the prizes. The other thing, like, I don't want the prize to be like £100 or £500. Like, people then take it a bit too seriously. Like, this is for fun. Yeah. We're meant to be messing around here. Like, the whole thing is absurdly lighthearted. And like, ultimately that prize element is sort of like, is the brand of like style of humor, and I try to add it's a bit stand-up-y and things like that. But I do it. The fact people enjoy it is what fuels me to do it.
I appreciate that you're like, it's all a bit of fun, it's meant to be light-hearted, and about 10 minutes ago you were like, so basically there's probably places I can't go back into to compete in a pub quiz because I
Yeah.
Too serious about it. So would you say that you're creating an environment that deters people like you from being too serious?
This has turned into a very useful therapy session for my pub quiz problems.
Are you feeling a lot of things about yourself?
How does that make you feel?
I'm attempting to deter anyone like me from going anywhere near it by placing myself in the center, but as far away from it as possible. Yeah. So it's been great. We've got a few coming up this month, depending on when this goes out. I think that there'll be Friendship Adventure down in Brixton is towards the end of May, and we have the Rose and Crown in Kentish Town, which is the first Tuesday of every month. But it's all on the website and stuff, so people can click the link and see. I keep it updated, like, so people know when the quizzes are. So they're a lot of fun.
So you do the pub quizzes, but I know you actually do more than pub quizzes, don't you? Because you've done like a boat cruise recently, didn't you? Like, I think that's just passed, if I remember correctly.
Yes, it was last week. It was it was 10 days ago. Yeah. So the irony of this, and I think we did mislead people slightly, but it didn't matter, is that the barge didn't move.
Right, okay. Right.
So the bar, it was on a barge, it was on a boat, but the boat was stationary. And I think because I knew that, it hadn't occurred to me that other people might not think that. So we got there, and people were like, oh, like, they came running. The last two came. They're like, oh, they were like 5 minutes late, and they were like, we're so sorry. I was just saying, like, you waited for us. I was like, yeah, we're gonna start the quiz in a minute. He was like, yeah, but we obviously didn't want to miss like the boat leaving. And I'm like, oh, the boat's not going anywhere.
That doesn't go anywhere.
Moored. The boat is not moving. I'm not doing a quiz on a moving boat. Like, that's way too much going on. It was hard enough as it was. It was amazing. We tried to challenge ourselves. So Dorothy, the owner of the boat, Xenia, and the name of the boat, it, like, needs to be said at like all times. I've realized if you own a boat, you can offend a boat owner quite a lot if you don't constantly refer to the name of their boat. So she came to one of my quizzes and liked it a lot, and has set up the London Barge Company, which is an awesome sort of new company that she's sort of dreamt up. And she has this incredible boat. I mean, it is stunning and huge for a barge. We had 30 people in there, which fit quite snugly, but still well. And we brought in beer from 3 breweries that I like working with a lot. We had beer from Exhale, like I was mentioning, from Aura, who are the Italians up in Tottenham. Yep. Great beer, very creative flavors. Yeah, and from someone called Jidler's Tipple, who's a guy called Jacob, and he brews at different places, and his beer is really, it's low alcohol, so it's 3.8, but it tastes like really, there's a lot of flavor to it. And so it was also, we were trying to get like a good array of beers and a good diversity of beers in there. It was really successful. It was really good. It was a lot more experiential than some of the others, because I had everyone in sort of a captive audience, right? So it wasn't like we were at a brewery where there's like a bit more going on. Everyone was there specifically for the event. So we did a lot more. There was sensory tasting stuff. I mean, not in the sort of like professional way like you do, Joe. It was like a blindfold yourself in your hoodie and
brilliant.
So if we're gonna say whose end of the spectrum like that was on between me and Joe, it was like me, like my end of the spectrum.
Yeah.
I love that.
It was definitely that
sounds super fun.
It was amazing. It was a really amazing night, and I think we probably will do it again at some point in the future. I think both of us really enjoyed it, and I think it was cool. We did some other like new beer games that we like came up with, and again, it's not drinking games though. Like this is the thing I want to also say, like, there's nothing at the quiz or the events that is ever about like downing your drink or like getting drunk or whatever. Like, that does not exist there, and I'm like really anti that. It's very much about like beer as a concept and as an enjoyment thing, and sometimes people come to the things and don't drink at all, and which is literally totally fine. There's no need to drink as part of it. With those like tasting rounds, normally it's like someone on the team has to do it, but there's never something that like forces anyone to drink at all. Like, we never go anywhere near anything like that. So I think that's really problematic. So I think, like, again, we try to create the space is meant to be very inclusive. It's meant to make sure everyone there is enjoying themselves. And like I say, I tried to sit down and actually get to know, like, in the middle of rounds. Sometimes I'm like, oh, I should probably get on with this quiz, but I've been chit-chatting to people, like, you know, in the break. And so, you know, the goal for me is like I say, like, it's that social element of it and that building of a community, even if it's just for like 2 hours on a boat, right? Everyone there like remembers that now, and like, you know, they felt like of something. I think that's what the goal of it like is at every single place, and that's why we found, I think, so much success with it. And I have, like I say, some friends who are very supportive, who pop along sometimes as well. I've got called in a few favors for ones where it's looked like less people were going to turn up, and actually I've normally been wrong, and they've, other than one, I think they've all been totally nearly completely full. But sometimes I'll be very nervous that no one's going to show up, and I'll like message someone and be like, this is the one you have to come to. They're like, do I have to? I'm like, you have to be there. I need a couple more tables. And then I'll get there. They're joking. There's like 50 people here. I'm like, well, I didn't know there was going to be 50. I was very, very anxious. I've never done it this brewery before. I thought it was going to be like, 2 people. They're like, why would only be 2 people here? And I'm like, I don't know. I jump to the worst conclusions all the time. So yeah, they've all been really good. So except what one was like, there was a bit of the Omicron thing was just starting, and it was. We ended up doing it. We ended up doing it, and no one got COVID from it, fortunately. But otherwise, yeah, it's been a fun ride, and it's something that I like. Yeah, I'm just thinking how I can like continue to expand it and try to like be a positive impact within this, because as I sort of mentioned, I'm like not from within this industry. Like I talk to people, like how long have you been brewing for? Oh, how long have you been in the beer industry? I'm like, not really who I am. Like I sort of like popped up here out of nowhere. I think people are struggling to like place me a little bit. They're like, wait, because I have a beard. And so
why aren't you brewing beer? Like you're brewing the beer,
obviously.
Right? Obviously.
If you're you must have been doing this for years. I'm like, no, not really. But I mean, I can't help but have a beard. It's literally my ethnicity demands it of me. I've had a beard since I was like 8. Like it's important. Like I have it to like. It's not, but it helps me fit in. But like it's like interesting. It's an interesting thing. So people always like place me as well. They're like, oh, he must do that, or he must. And I've started brewing beer as a lockdown. In lockdown, everyone started doing something with yeast.
Yeah.
It was
bread, brewing, sourdough.
Yeast.
You were so right though. No, you were so right.
Yeast it was like the winner of lockdown was yeast.
Yeah.
And the QR code. Nothing had a better
hand sanitizer and hand sanitizer. Don't forget.
But yeast, everyone started doing something with yeast. So I went with brewing beer, and I thought, I also don't want to be, I don't criticize beer. I don't want to pretend I can analyze and assess beer if I don't know how to make it myself. So I started brewing beer in the kitchen and stuff like that. And that's also like quite therapeutic. I'm a terrible chef. Awful. Like it's diabolical. In fact, it's shameful. But my brewing is going okay. I'm not sure the difference, but of why one's so bad and one's not terrible. And I just won my first gold medal in a brewing competition.
Congratulations.
Very exciting for a Vienna. Yeah, I felt very vindicated. My partner, she was like, oh, I guess it was worth something. She's like, what was the prize? I was like, it was the little rosette. She's like, yeah, but like, how much did you win? And I was like, what do you mean?
The little rosette.
The glory. I got the glory of coming first.
A gold rosette. She's like, yeah, but it wasn't like an actual prize. I'm like, well, they gave me some nice socks and like there's a pair of socks and like and a packet of yeast, and she's like, what is the point of that? I'm like, no, but the rosette. And I like wore it for like a week.
I like to think you were going to like work meetings and you were like
I was. I wore it at all times, even when it made no sense at all.
What's that? And you're like, this? Oh, I forget I have it on sometimes. It's so crazy.
What's that doing there?
This is so embarrassing. Oh
yeah, God. Someone must have pinned it to me while someone pinned this to me when I wasn't concentrating. Like, but yeah, no, it's been fun, and the homebrewing community has been quite an intriguing thing to open up. And Joe, I know that you and I were chatting about that at Werewolf, weren't we? There's an event there's a big competition happening in the middle of May. I think it's May 14th to 15th at Hamilton. They asked me to help with sort of partnerships for it and trying to talk to people about different breweries about like how they wanted to interact with that competition. And it's been quite fascinating also trying to like see what this homebrewing kind of scene is like. Something that is very, I guess I wasn't surprised, but I was a bit disappointed like the lack of representation in it in every single possible way. And I find that the meetings I've gone to are actually very, very very kind. Like everyone's very nice. Everyone's in fact everyone is lovely. What I would say is I don't know how I feel walking in there as a woman, to be honest. There are very few. And Joe, one of the things that I was saying to you at Werewolf as well, that we were talking, I was like, I really want you to come and be a judge at the event, because there literally just needs to be more women judges, and there's like no reason for there not to be. And it really, the environments that I've worked in prior to beer are very diverse. I would say like the non-profit space that I work in is very diverse, very inclusive. And I think the beer thing, I was a bit like, that's like, I don't know, but I wasn't really expecting it. And so like it's really exciting that you're coming to judge at that
yes,
event.
I have signed up to judge at that event. I'm excited for it. Filling out the form was a little bit of a challenge, I think. And I wonder
I don't know, I haven't seen it.
Yeah, so I filled out the form, and I think it would be good. I actually spoke to Tori about this when I was filling it in, and I think one of the things I'd like to chat to like whoever's there, organisers, whoever, about is that form, and whether that's like the standard form, because even I, as someone like, I'm a certified beer server, but that wasn't actually on the list of qualifications. And then it was like, you are qualified to do this, and I was like, am I? And like, you couldn't say no, and I was like, oh, I don't know if I can fill this in. And I went, and I am. I mean, I can taste beer, so I probably can judge it.
You've judged. To be fair, you've judged before in like real ale competition stuff. So give yourself a credit, like you've done that before.
Yeah, I have.
But what's that criteria of what ticks that box?
Right.
So I'm
qualified? So I think a little bit of that is, you don't, looking at forms like that, you don't know if you're qualified to do it, but I filled it in, and apparently I am, so I'm gonna do it.
I mean, you definitely are. Like it's 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 a side of it I don't really understand either that well, and like I said, I'm starting to learn about it, and like I say, it's such a lovely, welcoming community, or I have found it to be welcoming personally. But it's interesting, and I guess like I don't know why it's not more sort of like why more women aren't there. Like I and this is probably quite ignorant of me to kind of say it like this as a man, but that's the thing. I don't really understand it. And so this is also something that it's like, they said, oh, can you volunteer and help with the partnerships on this? And I said, yeah, absolutely. And I think like something that we get a couple of guest tap lines on, and I think, Joe, I reached out to you, like we want to make sure we get at least one, if not more than one, like women-owned breweries to be part of those guest taps. Like that's like part of diversifying this industry, is elevating and being able to put these kind of things forward. So again, it's like fun and I'm mainly trying to like be a positive influence from outside but within. And so far it's enjoyable. And I'll keep doing it until I stop enjoying the taste of beer, I suppose. I don't know if I'll like regress to pre-18-year-old me as I get older.
Right, and you're like, no.
That kind of thing.
So I think like you were saying about like why there's not more, and this what I'm about to say may be completely incorrect at all, but I think sometimes it takes seeing more people like yourself. I think it works across like all sort of people in a minority situation. It's like you want to see more. If you see somebody like yourself that's doing it, you suddenly feel like either inspired or like you're capable. And I think even when it comes to like entering homebrew competitions, you'll probably find that like a majority of the people entering the competitions are men, because that's probably like you see men on the board judging. If you maybe saw more women, you might have some women that were like, I wasn't gonna, like, if it was all men, they might go, oh, I'd enter, but I probably won't win. Or there's just that lack of like confidence because there's that lack of representation. But the more you see other people being represented, even if they're not winning the first place rosettes or anything else like that, you might see that like if they just see themselves being represented back in that panel, they're like, oh, that's inspiring. Actually, that's something that I want to work towards, and it makes them want to go out and do it more. So I think like it can only be a positive thing that like Joe, you're getting involved, and like Joe, that you're helping to try to get people like Joe involved. So that's a really like a positive thing. So yeah, how many is it? Just like, do you know, you don't have to keep this in, but just out of sheer curiosity, like do you know how many other women judges that there are?
So this is the thing. So yeah, because I'm not doing with the judging side, but my understanding is there's not too many. I know there's another woman, Helen, who is the sort of beer sommelier at a brewery that I work with, German Craft, and she's going to be doing it as well. And again, so I told her about it. So this is the thing. She literally is like a professional beer taster, similar to you, Joan. Like she works literally for a brewery. She'd never even like heard of the opportunity though. Like, she didn't even know it really existed. And so I told her to do it. She's like, oh, absolutely, I'm going to do that. So she's signed up, I think, as well. And I think there are about 25, 30 judges in total, but I don't know how many there are. And it's interesting with the entrance thing you're saying, because there has been talk of having a category which is only women brewed beer, like the winning woman. The issue is it's anonymous.
Yeah.
So we don't know whose beer is whose, or even really who's that. I don't think there's a question on the form about like what your gender identity is either. And I think
so.
To be fair, I mean, and I can only speak from my standpoint as a person that doesn't homebrew at all, so it would be interesting to hear Joe's take on it as well. But I just know like how I am in general. I almost think that like it's probably better if there isn't that separate category, because I guess, and this might be controversial, but I think actually I'd liked, maybe again it's controversial potentially, and maybe it's partially my personality, I'd quite like to go toe to toe with everybody. Like I don't want to feel like for some way, you know, oh great, I won in the female category, but how does that stack up against the men? Because like honestly, beer and brewing beer doesn't know your gender identity. It doesn't, like, that's the great thing about beer and how beer is for everyone, brewed by everybody. Like it doesn't know how you identify in that sense. And then like, okay, what do you do if somebody is, you know, gender fluid or cisgender, or, you know, they're non-binary, like all these other things, like what are you going to have then it opens that can of worms. And I think really beer doesn't know who's brewing it. And so if you can make a good beer, you can make a good beer. But that's just my 2p on it. I'll be really interested to hear, Joe, like what your thought on it is.
So I agree. But I think it's that barrier of doing it in the first place. So like, you know, I'm one of these contrary people who's like, I want to do that, so I'm going to do it. I don't care if you don't think that I should, I'm going to do it anyway. But there are other people that are like, oh, home brewing's for men. Like that's I don't think I should do that. I know there's a competition in the US called She Brew, which is just for women, and it's a kind of that step of like, you can enter a competition. All right, you've entered this competition, now see what else is around, you know, what other local competitions, what other, you know, you can go from there and go into these other competitions where there's everyone. Like it's just that knowing that you, like you said, like seeing people, seeing yourself there, and if you see it, you can be it. So knowing that you can is then that stepping stone into going like, oh yeah, I can do this.
I think it's a bit different when you go like, here's like an overall competition that's just for you know, women or anything. But then I think like if it's a competition that's for everyone, like maybe, you know, would the better approach be to use that money on marketing to appeal more to women, do a marketing campaign that's like featuring female brewers talking about their experience and encouraging other women or non-binary people or anything else to be like, you know, anybody else to go like, yeah, you can do it too, as opposed to having separate categories. I don't know, it's just a really interesting conversation, so I thought I would just throw that in there.
There's arguments for both, right? It's like, you know, like some people, oh well, we want our own category, and some will say, well, that it doesn't work like that, or like that, if anything, in some ways could like propagate the discrimination elements a bit. And I think there's like arguments for all sides, and it's like I don't think what you say is too controversial. I think there's just arguments for every side.
I totally get the other side of it as well, like 100%.
And I think it's a great idea to think, okay, how can we actually encourage more women to participate and make that space feel more inviting. And it's, you know, I attempt to be an ally in that way, right? It's like, you know, I'm chatting to you, Joe, and I'm like, please come do it, but I'm not gonna dance around the fact that like it's important for you to be there because you're representing something for others. Like it's not just because that you can do it, it's because actually like you can trailblaze in this way. And it's similar to what I said to Helen as well. It's like, like the home brewing scene needs people like yourselves so what can I do other than to try and like find you and say, this exists, you're invited, and you're going to like make an impact as well. And it's like this, so this is kind of, I suppose, like in some ways, like the strategy. And again, it's the same thing with like, hey, make sure the breweries that we partner with and work with have a same set of values as well. Because I do believe the home brewing community has the set of values that we would all agree with here.
Yeah, 100%.
It's just like in practice, how does it actually manifest itself? But it is definitely a fascinating conversation.
Just while we're on the topic of inclusivity and diversity and that whole spiel, I know we talked about this sort of before we started recording, so I'm going to ask it's not a controversial question, but it's a potential question that some people might feel awkward about, but here we lean into the awkward. If something were to happen at one of your events, we hope it doesn't happen, you're a guy that's pretty, I think, sharp and is aware of your surroundings, but if something were to happen at one of your events, like, is there a mechanism for somebody to come and report an experience, whether it be harassment, whether that be aggression towards them, anything? Is there a way for people to, if they feel uncomfortable or unsafe at all, to report?
Yeah, it's such an important question, and I think the first thing that my instinct firstly is that I am a guest in the home of the brewery, right? And so I would generally expect a brewery to have policies that help with that kind of thing. I also attempt only to work with breweries who to my understanding, do have an understanding of that. A lot of the breweries I work with, the staff teams there's a lot of women on the staff teams, or are owned by women or managed by women, or the women are brewers, things like that. Again, we're thinking about the fact that I'm selecting breweries, and I'm oversubscribed and selecting breweries that, to me, have a shared set of values to mine. Do I have a specific set of guidelines or a mechanism for that? And the answer is, honestly, I don't. And you asking that question is making me think, well, that's probably a way that I can continue to improve this experience, is by creating something like that, or speaking to someone who's an expert in that kind of thing. And I mentioned this when we chatted offline just before, but I've been involved in running events before, like big, like cultural, intercultural, interfaith, Jewish kind of conferences, things like that. And at that sort of thing, we always do integrate. There's a lot of policies like that, and there's a lot of focus on welfare and safety, and participant safety and participant care. There's like whole teams devoted only to welfare and participant care. And in the nonprofit and education world, it's something that has a huge amount of focus. So something that like I've had experience in before, and I guess like I said, I would like to put my trust in breweries, and maybe I'm being naive. To my understanding, or from my own like experience of it, there's never been any sort of issue at any of the events. But also it might be that I didn't know about it, and it's sort of okay, as the facilitator, yes, I'm a guest in the space, but I'm also the reason people are there that night. Like, should I be taking a more proactive role? So I would say reactively, yes, we think about this a lot, but should I be doing something proactive, like in the first place, to ensure that something doesn't happen, or those mechanisms exist? And so you asking me that question is great, and one of the reasons I'm so like excited to have been on this podcast with you both is like what you're doing is important. You're asking like questions that need to be asked in this industry and in these spaces. So in giving people like myself, who have all the best intentions but maybe don't have like the level of personal experience or understanding of it, a way to actually continue to improve the events and make them safer and ensure the safety. And like I say, it's that difference on proactive versus reactive, and trying to be more proactive about it.
Yeah, it's that thing of like I said, you hope it doesn't happen, and I'm sure probably like at your events they probably happen quite, like you said, the places that you're going to, quite forward-thinking places. I mean, that being said, it can happen anywhere. It can happen to anybody. It doesn't have to be specifically a woman. Like, it literally can happen to anybody at any time, in any place, no rhyme or reason, any time of day. It could be any type of issue. And I think sometimes, just to be very clear as well, like I don't think that it's ever relating to you specifically or to the brewery specifically. Like sometimes it can be like, just in the example, if we think off the top of our head, like somebody is like, I'm really excited to go to this beer quiz, I'm excited about a brewery, I'm going to take my friend who's not really a craft person, and they'll come down and, you know, this will be great, we'll have, you know, we'll do this quiz, we'll do all this stuff. And if somebody, you know, goes to the toilet or goes out for a smoke or goes to the bar, and it's another patron that's doing something, and they're not in a space that they're comfortable about, they're intimidated about the place they're in, they feel out of sorts, they might not report it to the brewery, they might not know that brewery's procedures around it. Like we know there's the Ask for Angela things, but those aren't always in the toilets for people to be aware of. And it might not be something that they feel is quote unquote Ask for Angela like worthy, if that makes sense. They might just be like, oh, it was something that was like a bit awkward, and they're doing that thing where they're like, that person was a bit drunk, so, or I don't know. So I was just wondering, like, if it was a case of, you know, you say to people, you know, being drunk is not an excuse for anything, or, you know, if you have anything, here's where you'd report it, or that kind of stuff, because it's very much, I'm very aware that it's not always like you running the show or the brewery. Like sometimes people might just feel out of their element and they might not know where to go. So I thought it's quite important to ask that question, just for people that are listening that might be like, what do you do?
Definitely, it's a really important question to ask. That's why I'm like, you know, I again, like I like to do things that make me think and like continually strive to improve in every aspect of what I do. Other than cooking, I've already given up and it will never be good. And that's just, it's over. And I think, you know, the thing I do try to do, and it's less, you know, tangible, but is I'm the one holding the space, right? And the goal is that my manner, I'm leading by example, right? And this is also something we talk about a lot in the world of like education. You're leading by example. So my manner within all of that and how I communicate with everyone over the microphone and my general like demeanor is going to set the tone in some ways. So I set the tone in a very intentional way. That is, this is fun, this is inclusive, we're all like part of this like one evening together kind of thing. And again, it's like, even before the quiz, I'll go around and be, like I said, sit down with people, oh, like, how do you know about this kind of thing, and blah, blah. And sometimes there are people there who seem a bit more nervous or a bit more unsure of like what they're doing there. And they're the people that I will attempt to spend more time with actually, and hope that they feel comfortable. And again, this isn't like, I'm not like gonna save the day in like a dire situation necessarily with this. But again, this is like these elements of like slightly more like intangible things. What you can do is, you know, yeah, I'm sitting down with people, I'm saying, oh, like, no worries. If you need any drinks recommendations, just let me know. Or like, if you need anything, just like come up and say hi or whatever. And I'm going around after each round pretty much, checking in on each team, like, how are you doing? Like, are you good with this kind of thing? And again, it's low key, it's very subtle. And maybe it needs to be less subtle, and there needs to be something more specific said at the beginning, just to set like a set of, you know, behavioral guidelines. But ultimately, I do think that the environments that I'm trying to create lend themselves to, don't lend themselves to you know, unnecessary behavior. But as you say, it could happen to anyone, anywhere, from anyone. So there's not only so much I can do. I'm not saying that. It's more like you can't account for everything with those sorts of strategies. But like I say, to my knowledge and understanding, like we've never really had any sort of issues. And I think, again, people take my lead in terms of that. So again, this, like I say, like there's never any drinking games. Like,
to be fair to you, you're not encouraging people to binge drink and be a jerk or anything like that. That's just not like the MO of what your events are about, which I think is really good, because it's like, even when I do things like play games of beer pong or whatever, that's the American side of me coming out. People drink at, like, I know people that'll be like, oh, we do it the way you're supposed to, and you're drinking every time we shot. And I was like, no, I just drink while playing. Like, you play with water and I just drink while playing. That's the real MVP way to play it. That's top tip for anyone listening. Fill your cups with water, because that ball is disgusting and it's rolling all over the ground. Don't drink out of what, have your cup, drink to the side, and it becomes less a drinking game and more a game to play while you're drinking. And I think when you take that element of like binge drinking out of the games, so to speak, and drinking just becomes alongside the games, that probably helps, I would imagine, set the tone for what you want it to be.
Exactly. And that's exactly what I try to do. There's no element to it which is forcing anyone to drink or coercion, like, at all. It's the opposite of that, to be honest. Like I say, there'll be occasional things where like people have to like taste something, but it was not like everyone has to. And normally there'll be someone in a team, or probably multiple, who will be up for that. But if a team came to me and said, actually none of us are drinking tonight, can we like skip that round? I'd be like, yeah, of course. Like that's totally fine. Like there's never ever any element of coercion at all in terms of the activities that we do.
I love that.
No, that's brilliant. I feel like that was like a really downer question. I didn't mean for it to be. So like to bring it it is very much an important conversation. But to bring the tone back up, I want to ask, what is your top tip for like what are your top tips for going around London, or what are the things that people absolutely need to avoid, like things they might not even think about that they're doing that they shouldn't do, that's just gonna, I don't know, screw their experience up?
Yeah, I'd say Leicester Square. As like just like, you know, the specific thing, you know, like don't go there. No, I'm joking.
Just don't go there.
I used to, yeah, sorry, that's the end of the no. I used to do a bit of writing. I used to do a bit of writing, like tour guiding kind of writing kind of thing for a few like magazines. And one of the articles I once wrote was like 10 things to never do in London, and then it's basically like the London Eye. That's the square. It's like basically all like the most famous stuff.
I've done the London Eye so many times. It is shocking. To be fair, it's because like it's like I came here when I came to visit my husband. We did it once, and then I moved here after we got married. My family came to visit, did it again. A friend came to visit, did it again, and then it was like a work event where we went into London, did it again. That and Stonehenge. Stonehenge are the
you'll
two
do
things
the
that I'm
London
like, if you
Eye,
visit me, I'm never going there.
but you won't do Stonehenge. Like
Stonehenge, I've been there too. No, full stop, not happening. No, at least
not sure how
I feel personally
both
attacked
of those
that you won't do
things.
Stonehenge.
I have gone to Stonehenge so many times. Joe, how many times have you gone to Stonehenge? Because I've probably done it double. Yeah, I've done it like 3 times the times you've done it at least. 300% markup on that. It is insane. At least like Stonehenge I have to go out of my way one way. The London Eye, at least I'm sort of like around there kind of.
yeah, you can go to other things nearby. I mean, and when it comes to like the beer scene in London especially, I mean my biggest tip that I give to people who come to London and want to like experience like British beer is get out of zone 1. Right, get out of zone 1. There's an article coming up called "Is There Good Beer in Central London?" And essentially the answer is there is, but you need to work hard to find it. And I think like one other thing that I've been trying to do with Beer in the City from the start, which is these beer guides. So I have like different neighborhood guides. So there's like north, south, east, and actually there isn't a West London one yet because there's no like congregation of breweries in any one part. I was talking to Lucy from Dodo Micropub on the phone last week because we hopefully do an event together, and she was telling me how we were saying, she was like, oh, there isn't the guy from West London. I was like, no. She's like, to be fair, she was like, it's like just us. And I was like, yeah, that's the issue. So what I do is I do these like brewery crawl itineraries, and sort of like if you were going to go to Hackney or Black Horse Road or Walthamstow or Brixton or like different parts of London, the places where there are like these kind of congregations of breweries, like what can you do and where can you go kind of thing, and what's like the order you could do them in, and you can do one or you can do all 5 of them or whatever. And it's also like trying to highlight areas such as Wood Green, which most people don't even know where it is or that it exists, but it's like a really multicultural area that happens to now have 2 or 3 really cool breweries there. Nice. Or areas such as Brixton, and being like, you know, there's lots of challenges with the way Brixton is gentrified over the last, you know, for 10-15 years especially, and there's a brewery scene there too, and the way that the two interact with each other is really fascinating. And it's great, and it's also problematic, and you can like go there and try and like, you know, experience the area and, you know, do craft beer and see how you feel about that kind of thing. So it's also challenging people to get out of their comfort zone a bit more. And again, it's for anyone and everyone. The target audience of these is more likely to be people who are like brewery hunting, or even people coming to the UK from, or to London, I suppose, from outside of London, and who want to experience like clusters of breweries and beer tourists and stuff like that, because that's what I've kind of been, right? It was, I know I name drop a lot of places that I go, and it's like a habit that like makes me sound a bit wanky, but like I do it because it's true.
No, you promote the places you love.
Yeah. I was in that the concept of that start for that specific bit started. I was in Florence for work, which was like the most random place I've ever been for to do anything, and I was there for a day and a night. It is lovely, but it's not. Yeah. Anyway, I was there for work. it finished unexpectedly early, and I was like, oh, I'll go have something to drink, and wanted to find beer. So I found like the one craft beer bar that I thought existed there that someone had recommended me. And I was talking to the guy who owned it, and he was telling me how there are a few places in Florence just dotted around. There's like 4 or 5. And I said, oh, can you write them down on a list for me? So yeah, sure. So he wrote them down, and I was like, great, I'm going to go to all 5 of them. And I had my computer with me because I'd come just straight from meetings. And so I went to all 5. And at the last one, it was a bit late, and I was like on my own, and there wasn't really anyone to chat to. So I got the computer out, and I was like, I'll just write like a little, write up of each one and like what you get. So anyone else who comes to Florence on their own, has an evening available, and likes craft beer, so the other like 2 people on earth that might apply to
I
ever
would do that.
might be able to utilize this.
I'm going to use your Athens one, because
Yeah.
I'm going to Greece at the end of the month, and I saw that you had the
Amazing.
Athens one. And
Yes.
I've done my own research, but I don't think you can I'm a project manager by
Right.
day, so I don't think you can like over manage the situation. Like I don't think feel like you can over risk
No.
assess
All
things.
advice
Like,
is good advice,
I'm
right?
just like, exactly. I'm like, oh, this one, I'll have to come back to this. Like bookmark. That is great.
Yeah. Yeah, like, so I mean, so like that. So the Florence one was the very first one, and it was just like a document on my computer. And I was like, if anyone ever needs beer recommendations in Florence, I've got them. And everyone's like, why on earth would we need that? Like, that's not why anyone goes to Florence. So like, that is a good point.
Yeah, but you go to Florence, and where are you going to drink when you're in Florence?
beer,
Why does
exactly.
nobody else think of this? When
I
you
know.
travel, you still need to drink beer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I made it kind of my very true. What a slogan for life. When you travel, you still need to
Yeah,
drink
there
beer.
you go. You
Very
can have
true.
that one. You can plaster it all over those.
I'll put the quotes on the back of t-shirts and have
There you
Tori Powell at the bottom. So I did it for a few different places, and actually, when I say I've lots of drafts, I have about 20 other cities that have like notes about them that I haven't like been able to like whip up into shape enough to like publish. And I'm like, I should have probably just put them on and say they're just kind of rough. But I'm a bit of a perfectionist with those sorts of with writing. So
I feel
Yeah, so it's
personally
quite-
attacked.
Tori Powell's
I feel
blog.
personally attacked. So personally attacked right now.
yeah, it's a problem, isn't it? But it's yeah. So that's what's happened. So the Athens one's on there, so it's great that you're going to get to use it. And yeah, there's quite a few more around like European cities, and there's a few America ones coming up. My partner's American as well, so we go back quite a lot. And yeah, I'll
What
be
part
like
of the US? I need to know.
just outside of New York.
I'm
So-
just outside of Boston, so
Oh, I'm going to Boston for pretty much the first time in a month's time, so I'm going to ask you for all your recommendations,
I mean,
which I'm already trying to figure out.
absolutely. I've got this in my draft folder of things I
Yeah.
haven't published, so
Fine,
I will
we'll
give
trade
you
drafts,
the
we'll trade
insights.
drafts.
If you've got anything for a sample, I'll take it, and I can give you all the unpublished stuff for
Perfect.
outside Boston.
Yeah,
So-
Istanbul it's quite funny. I wrote a while I was there, not doing anything to do, and with the whole Brew thing, I wrote where to get craft beer in Istanbul, but I mean it's like craft
Probably
beer
out-
kind of thing.
and it's probably also out of date now.
It's,
the time I'm going.
I think it's very out of date, and I think it was quite funny. It was published on like an expat magazine website. Like it was like specifically like an online magazine for expats, so it's all in English. So because that was my writing language was comfortable. And I put it on there, and then a couple of people came to Istanbul right when I knew where I was leaving to like take over from my position, and at my like leaving thing, one of the guys said, "Oh, he was like, it's funny, like I actually heard of Joey before I met him because I'm into craft beer and I googled craft beer in Istanbul. Like the only thing that came up was like one random article, and it turns out it's by the person that I'm replacing.
Oh,
That's
wow.
amazing.
Having a humanitarian aid job that he was like, what? But Joey Leskin's quite like an unusual name, so he was like, it must be the same person. And
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, that was me.
And
He
you're
was
like, can I interest you in like 4 dead ponies?
seriously, had I not spent, I should have just tried to sell them on to him,
Yeah.
but yeah, it never occurred to me.
Should've
But I know,
marked it up.
cyclical. Yeah, seriously, mark up on them. These are aged dead ponies, so they're worth
Oof.
more. Yeah,
Ooh.
famously makes a pale ale better.
Yeah.
Super dead
Yeah.
ponies.
Yeah. Yeah. So I do these kind of guides, and I do them for London and things like that. And again, it's like, it's fun, and it's like, oh, I need to do some research and go to this brewery and do a thing. And I
I enjoy that kind
Again,
of research.
is the best kind.
Right.
But I never want to also like talk. So there's no rate. Originally, I was going to do like a rating system out of like 5, but actually I decided I took that out because I don't want to rate the breweries. What I'm trying to do is just say like what they're like in terms of like a few different categories, like how warm they are, what the vibe is, can you get food, is there what things you should know, this kind of thing. It's meant to be like, but it's not like how good it is, because and like what beer there is, but it's not like how good is the beer, because I want people to make their own minds up. Some people like certain spaces, certain beers, certain vibes. Some people would like others. We like different things on different days. Like, okay, I want to know which brewery to go to when I want a calm drink, like in the corner, and I want to know which brewery if I want to like go and like rage all night. And there's it might be the different ones, and I'm one week and one the other. So that's the goal. So it's not actually meant to like rate them in any way. It's sort of going back to what we were talking about with the Untapped thing, because I realized it doesn't feel fair. It's more meant to be like a sort of as objective as I can analysis of it, written for someone who kind of understands breweries a bit, but not necessarily like someone who's like an ultra nerd. It's meant to, so that's kind of like,
it's someone knows what they're getting into before they get into it. So go, this either sounds like it's up my street and is my vibe, or it's not.
Exactly, and then it clusters them in different areas of London basically. And then
like you said, some stuff is super far out of the way, so you're like, if I'm going to take a 1 hour, like 45-minute train ride to an hour to get there, and there's not really that much else around it, I kind of want to know what I'm going to get before I get there and realize it is not my vibe, and I have to take 20-30 minute journey back in the other direction. Definitely,
and that's the thing. I want people to feel like set up for success when they like get there, kind of thing. And the same with the international parts, but I just found that with the international guides, like there wasn't really like that anything on the internet, because otherwise I would have found it. There are other things. Oh, you can find like craft beer in this city or that city, but I find it's not to the extent or even like the depth that I would like. There are like Facebook, but I'm trying to put it all in one place. It's like you're going somewhere, check this out, and you'll like find out where to find craft beer here. I'm not saying it's everywhere that does craft beer, and it also focuses on local. So I'm not saying places that you can get like Belgian beer in like New York, of which there are a couple of great places. I'm saying, where can you get like American, where can you get Greek beer in Athens, not where can you find like German Keller beer and that kind of thing. So that's kind of it. And basically I'm writing things that I would find useful, and doing events that I think I would enjoy / would quash my my pub quiz rage, and trying to create environments that I enjoy, and it's all it's like I say, it's enjoyable and it's a passion project, and I think those are the best types of projects, right? Similar to your podcast here, like it's not nothing should be a chore on these sorts of things, otherwise why are we doing it? So it's all fun, and I'm coming at it with like a smile and not taking it like too seriously. But also like understanding that for some people beer is a serious business, and so trying to like lock into that in a way that feels appropriate, but also like puts my personal values and my personal approach at the front a little bit, because I'm quite like an active participant in things I do. So yeah, that's really it, and that's where it all kind of comes down to. And getting to do things like this is like one of the great benefits. Like I'm so pleased that we got to have this conversation.
This has been lovely.
Yeah, no, it was really
I think this I'm conscious that we've kept you for like 2 hours when we said we
told you we were like an hour, and then I said like, it might go slightly over, and then just tell us if you have to leave. But famously, like all of our episodes where we say it'll be like an hour.
Yeah,
it's gone double the time. I'm so sorry.
No, it's good. It's I don't know if you reveal your recording dates. Like, are we allowed to say what day it is today?
I mean, sometimes we do dates. Monday today.
It's not.
Oh yeah. If you want to.
No, it's it's like Christmas Day.
We're recorded on a bank holiday.
It's the end of the bank holiday, and so like, what I was gonna say was like, it's really nice to just end the bank holiday with something that's like feels like social and active and like nice. Like end the bank holiday is a bit like work tomorrow, and I mean I quite like my job, but it's like work tomorrow and this kind of thing. But it's very nice to like wind down with this fireside chat with two wonderful beer loving humans,
That's it. Yeah, I'm finishing it off with a nice Three Hills stout. I'm happy. It's
lovely.
Like, what else could I want? I feel like we'll have to catch up. I've got so many things I want to add, like not that I want to put on here, because I feel like I want to it's ideas that I'm like have you thought about this?
I will
I
take
don't want to
all
put on
of
it
it,
so
yeah.
no one takes it.
Yeah,
We have to catch up
Be
after.
careful. Be careful. Yeah. So luckily, most of the stuff we talked about here, I would be happy if anyone did them because I think they're really constructive. But if they're ones that
There's
only
other
the three
things
of
that
us-
I'm like, you could do this.
Yeah.
Not the three of us. I mean, maybe you and Joe. I'm just thinking, there's things I'm like, I wonder if you'd be interested in this.
Yeah.
I've been writing things down on a notepad as things have popped into my head because I didn't want to say them out loud.
Very strategic. Very strategic.
Project
I like that.
management.
Yeah. So, very on brand.
So before we end, is there anything you would like to plug? Where can people find you so that they can
Yeah.
see all
So
these lovely guides?
I feel like I've been trying to do that all the way through, and then I'm actually not very good at marketing. So like then everyone's like, great, I get this is all awesome, and I really want to be involved. Where on earth do I find any of this? And I'm like, so I didn't tell you the most important. It's like I made these coasters, and they have like no information of actually where to find. Like it's like so we've got new ones. As in I've had these for a year, and I did these sort of before I thought through the whole program. So we've actually got brand new, complete redesigned coasters. Because actually out you've got one, Joe, haven't you?
You need to QR code them. You need to put a QR code on that.
There is a QR code on the new ones are coming next week, and I'm very excited. I managed to finally burn through like 3 million coasters that I purchased in bulk a year ago.
Oh, now I'm jealous I don't have one.
Well, they're limited edition now. There's only like these 6 left, and that's basically that. So you'll get the new snazzy ones, but I'll keep one for you, Tori. Don't worry. Joe, unless you want to brag about the fact that you.
She'll pin it on her, and she'll go, I don't know. Oh, this is so embarrassing. How did a beer coaster end up on my shirt?
You don't have one? Like I thought everyone had one.
This is awkward.
But so you find everything in one place. It's beerinthecity.com. I feel very grateful that no one ever attempted to get what I believe is the most awesome URL out there.
Very good.
And I've bought every single domain suffix, so don't try it. If you're thinking of trying to get .org, I have it already. .co.uk, it's already taken. .beer, it's gone. Don't even try it. And I'm not selling it for any price. Beerinthecity.com. So it's everything's there. I also have an Instagram, which is Beer in the City Guides, because someone apparently did have beer.
Someone check that.
But it's not a use. It's like a derelict. There's like one follow. There's no posts. There's like one follower, and I've tried messaging them, and they've never read it. I think it's like someone set it up like 15 years ago when Instagram was like not even real. And like
I had that. I'll tell you about it after. I'll tell you about the one I tried to get.
It's better that than the fact that it would if it was like real Beer in the City. But there's no other brand called Beer in the City like worldwide. I did a bit of research before. Well, I have friends who are good at marketing, and then they tell me the things that I meant to do to like make sure I don't mess everything up with that site. So I have my Instagram. I have no aspirations of becoming an Instagram influencer, but I do find Instagram has been useful for getting information about the events out there. So Instagram is Beer in the City Guides. And we have a newsletter as well, a monthly newsletter, which is sort of a snapshot of some of the stuff on the site. It's a 2-3 minute read. It's only once a month. It's just meant to be like, cool thing to drink this month, cool place to go this month, funny story, and where the events are essentially. So there's monthly newsletter, Instagram, website. That's pretty much the lot. And you find it all on the website anyway. And then there's all the guides and everything, but it's all beerinthecity.com. Easiest URL to remember ever.
Amazing. And we'll put it in the show notes. Yeah, put it in the show notes so that you can just click on it and go and see all of it.
Perfect.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Lovely. Thank you so much for coming on.
I laughed so hard. I'd like you to become a stand-up comedian because I like literally.
It's funny. You two are funny too. I think Joe, when we met, we like. Tori, you're literally hilarious, and Joe, like, when we met, I think we actually spent like 25 or 30-minute conversations just like in stitches laughing at like random things just like talking about beer. I was like, you are a good time. Like,
it was when you were like self-deprecated. I literally draft up things and don't post them. I was like, I am feeling so personally attacked, and then you'd say something and I was just like, now I'm like crying laughing. This is amazing. Honestly, and I mean this, genuinely probably one of the most fun conversations we've had. Funniest conversations for sure.
Good. No, I'm glad.
I'm excited. I'm not far outside London, and I want to go to one of these events.
Come. I mean, most of them are like on the edges and stuff. Come to one. I mean, let me know when you're in London, and I'll like attempt to like sneakily arrange one like that day or that week or something. A few friends have said that. They're like, I'm gonna be in London like next month. Do you have a quiz? And I'm like, on like the one day that you happen to be there, like you have like a one, like no. They're like, can you do one that day? I'm like, no.
So
Like-
Joe's out in Kent, but I'm only in Berkshire, so I could get into
Yeah, she
London
can
like
get in really
fairly
easy.
easily, like a direct
Easy.
line into London. So it's not.
Easy.
But I find that
Perfect.
I take it for granted and I don't go in as much as I should. So if you do it on a weekend and you make it so I can still get home by the last train, I'm happy and I'll go.
Most people who come to the quiz want to make sure they get home from the last trains as well. We're doing actually, so when we with the London Amateur Brewing competition on the Saturday night, we are doing so it's at Hamilton. So we are doing one where it's open to the public as well, and then the Sunday is completely open to it. But I'm doing the quiz at Hamilton, which should be fun. We've not done Saturday nights before. We normally do Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays at different places. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see if the Saturday night vibe is any different.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm excited for that one.
Yay.
But good.
Cool. It's been such a good conversation.
Yes,
I
it
can't
has.
wait to go and check out your Athens beer guide. And obviously everyone can check out your beer guides if they're traveling within London. So
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you so much.
well, thanks for your time.
Thanks for your time. I know. I mean, this has been a blast. Like, I really enjoyed this a lot.
Like, honestly, that was the most I honestly, I know that we've discussed this before, we've said it before, say it again, like, oh, that was so fun, blah, blah. This was I think the most that I have physically involuntarily laughed when recording an episode. He is so on my wavelength.
So there were points there where I was like, I feel like he might be the male version of Tori.
Honestly, like when he was, I felt like I was being personally attacked. Like when he said things like, "Oh, I write these posts and I haven't published them yet," and I was like, "Oh, don't call out our shame, dude! Don't call out our shame." Oh, but no, he is super funny. So yeah, we are super similar, aren't we? We're both basically stand-up comedians. No, he is so funny and he's so easy to talk to. And the second he said, like, oh yeah, I work in communications, I was like, ding, ding, ding. That's like, yeah, that's very clear. But yeah, he was absolutely brilliant. I'm so glad that you met him.
Just literally
it's probably
bumped
good that
into
I
each
didn't
other.
meet him on that night.
Yeah.
Probably good I didn't meet him on that night, because that could have like either ended amazingly or he could have been like, never speaking to you guys again. So
I just want to point it out as well. I want to circle back to where he was talking about Lucy from the Dodo Micro Pub out in Hanwell. Lucy's TikTok game is like top shelf. So
I've seen it, to be fair, but then I don't
okay, I'm gonna
actively
link
monitor the TikTok because it makes me angry, because if it takes me 10 minutes to be on TikTok and to do a TikTok, I'm like, I'm done with you. And then normally it's littered with like mental health things and I'm like, oh, this is sad. And then I get off TikTok. So you have to send me the positive TikToks.
I'm gonna link to her TikTok in the show notes, because Lucy's TikToks for the Dodo Micropub are very, very good. Like, I think everyone should watch them. So we're gonna put those in there. And I think maybe at some point we need to get her on.
Like, we're just adding in the show notes. We're just going to add someone's TikTok.
Yeah, we're just going to add it in.
This is great.
It's beer related. It's
relevant.
fine.
It's relevant.
Yeah.
It's relevant to the conversation. Yeah, please. For some reason in my TikTok game, like I never get into beer TikTok. Like on occasion, I get recommended like.
You're not on beer
one or
TikTok.
two. No, like that's not my algorithm, and I don't
Oh.
understand why.
That's weird.
I don't understand why.
No.
That out of everything, I occasionally get one or two, but I don't really get much in the way of beer ones. So please amp up my beer TikTok algorithms and send me
I'll send you some.
funny beer TikToks.
I'll send you some. Tori, if people would like to talk to you about not publishing blog posts and
if you want to talk to me about not publishing your blog posts, being a procrastinator, or unnecessary levels of competitive, I mean, obviously I'm not the only person you can talk to about that, but you can find me on Instagram at adventures_in_optimism. But also, before we kick it over to Joanne to do her long list, the positive thing is we have a new space for our podcast.
We do.
Do you want to explain, Jo?
Right, so we have a new YouTube channel that is just for Women's With a Podcast. You may be watching us on it now. Congratulations. If you have found us there, make sure you subscribe, what's it those YouTuber people say?
Was it like smash the
that
like
bell,
button?
smash the like
Smash
button,
the
smash
bell.
that bell, like do that, do all those
Smash the
things,
bell.
do all of the things, because we don't know what that is.
Oh, I
but
hate
do
that I even said that. I need to wash my mouth out.
So make sure you subscribe so you can get all of these, because we don't want you to miss them. A Woman's Brew on Instagram is also how you can contact us on there. That is all for the podcast now. And we also have a new email address, which is a Woman's Brew podcast @gmail.com. Email us there if there are people you want us to interview, if there are subjects that you want us to cover on the podcast, email us there.
If you're a brewery that wants to talk to us,
Yeah.
or you're beer adjacent, or whatever, you think that you would make a really good guest for us, email us.
Email us. And if you want to talk to me about, I don't know, werewolf beer and how I end up bumping into people, places like
How you met Joey.
how I find our guests. You can find me at my beer school, which is Love Beer Learning, and we are on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I'm usually on Instagram, but we're also on TikTok, and we're also on Pinterest. We have a website, which is, I say we, it's not we, it's me. I have a website, which is lovebeerlearning.co.uk. There is a blog there that's, it's all right. It's not doing too badly. It's not too shabby.
If you want to talk to people, that post their blog posts,
I post on my blog. lovebeerlearning.co.uk/lovebeerlearningblog. And you can also email me at lovebeerlearning@gmail.com. And if you would like to support us, we are currently patreon.com/lovebeerlearning. So on that note, we're going to end our bank holiday. Cheers.
Cheers.